Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
The sun was slowly but surely moving toward zenith. Evelyn felt the hot rays of the sun burning her lower back through the thin cotton fabric of her t-shirt, the skin on her arms and ankles turning crimson. The woman paused for a moment to assess the extent of her defeat. What she saw shocked the woman, and she didn't hold back from commenting. By evening there will be bubbles, and then the skin will go stocking slip. I just went out, and I'm already burned. Like most blondes, Evelyn was afraid of sunbathing. Miracle creams never helped her, so she tried to stay out of the sun on particularly hot days. But to pull out today under the heat, she was forced by her neighbor. To be exact, not Nancy herself, but unwillingness to face her on the plot. She was an elderly woman in the village, disliked by many for her quarrelsome nature. Evelyn also had a bitter experience with her, and now always carefully avoided the neighbor's house. Even to the store for groceries, the young woman took a circuitous route, so as not to inadvertently stumble upon an unpleasant grandmother. For the same reason had to work in the vegetable garden in haste, and the most inopportune time. The nasty neighbor would go out to work on the beds when it was cold, and when the sun began to blaze, she would run away to her ramshackle house. There were different rumors about Nancy's building in the village, sometimes even the most ridiculous, but the landlady always called her dwelling a homestead, which pleased the local jokers. Village humorists amused the people with various pearls, the heroine of which was Nancy. The old woman in her own way perceived not humane attitude of her fellow villagers to her person. Despite her advanced years, the grandmother with youthful enthusiasm took revenge on offenders. In her arsenal were different ways, but most of all the grandmother liked to write complaints with invented facts. Nancy would file a denunciation with a policeman. Do you think Ethan had it all worked out? Ethan who? Well, Tesla. My name may not be known yet, but who knows what will happen in 5 or 10 years? Trying to be calm, Evelyn interrupted the sweet dreams of her loser husband. John, you're as far away from Tesla as you are from the moon. You're a loser or a modern-day loser. Therefore, I'm going to stop subsidizing your ideas completely. And in simple terms, I'm not giving you another dime. So instead of doing this nonsense, you'd better think about your job. I can't keep you on my back forever. This reproach cut painfully on the male ego, and John's polished face immediately distorted with a grimace of hatred. You've decided to kick me around with reproaches. Have you forgotten the shit I pulled you out of? If I hadn't married you 8 years ago, you'd still be in the pigsty. I saved you from slave labor and poverty. Evelyn knew that John was about to blame her for all his failures, so to avoid making matters worse, she went out onto the porch in silence, but her raging husband couldn't stop. You shouldn't do that, Evelyn. You'll regret humiliating me, and you'll regret it more than once when I'm rich. It'll happen, and I'll pass you by. You'll beg me to forgive your callousness, but I won't even look in your direction. So that his expressive monologue would not be drowned in the void, the man also left the house after his wife. Evelyn, you're lost without me. Come to your senses, you wretch. Otherwise, you'll end up in a garbage dump. Noticing that his only listener was getting farther away from the house, John ran after her, but immediately fell into the trench he had dug more than a month ago. Evelyn laughed heartily. You see, John, this is a sign from above. I remember you promised to bring water into the house, then you promised to steward the house, and all your promises are in this hole. You just dug yourself. Evelyn could hear her husband swearing as he climbed out of the grassy trench. She had long since gotten used to his flamboyant performances. Several times she had tried to get away from the scandalized man, but always something stopped her. And in the whole world, she had no one more dear to her than John. Despite his quarrelsome character, her husband never raised a hand on her, and he was not far. In the dense raspberries behind the neighboring fence, a quiet rustling was heard, and after a while Nancy herself appeared. "Good day to you, Evelyn, and good day to you, Nancy." Evelyn regretted that she had not noticed her neighbor in time. Now she would have to listen to the old woman's ramblings for the sake of propriety, but it didn't bother Nancy much that her appearance was not greeted with joy. She shook off from her warm vest plant debris, bloody raspberries, all chipped away, and no one cares, all abandoned. Evelyn was surprised not only by the old woman's inappropriate attire, but also by the eagerness with which she waded through the thorny shrubbery. The woman would hardly have made such a sacrifice for the sake of mere curiosity. Her hunch was at once confirmed. Nancy fixed her handkerchief on her small head, which resembled an unripe pumpkin. "Evelyn, how good it is to see you! There's a matter at hand, and I can't do without you." "I'm listening to you very carefully, Nancy." The thin lips of the old woman smiled, and her voice had an ingratiating tone. Evelyn knew she was about to ask for something. In the 8 years she'd lived with John, she'd learned to be calm about the most unusual requests, but she could tell from the way her neighbor was taking a long time to gather her thoughts that her grandmother was going to make some special demands. Nancy coughed for reassurance. "I'll tell you what, dear neighbor, my grandson, and he's a well-known man in town and almost an oligarch, has decided to revitalize our village." Although Evelyn didn't understand what her grandmother was getting at yet, she supported this initiative in absentia. It was high time to change something in our village. Grandmother was glad to have the support, and my Benjamin, too, thinks it's the right time to renew the village. He wants to build a bunch of stores and a factory to make juice. But first his grandson plans to build himself a 2-story house with an underground garage and parking lot. He told me a lot of things, but I didn't get all the details over the phone. And I'm very happy for you and your grandson. But what do I have to do with his plans? Now, honey, I'll explain everything. Benjamin likes it very much, this very spot where my manor house stands. It's close to the river and a short walk to the store. Well, but what's it got to do with me? Nancy could not bear it, and her peaceful tone changed to an angry one. What's not to understand? Our lots are right next to each other. Benjamin's house is to be built on the site of my estate. I've described everything to him in my will anyway, but my grandson wants to make a small park with a summer tent and fountains. He has 3 kids, and they need a separate place to play and have fun. Benjamin's other plans include Evelyn interrupting a pushy neighbor. "Thank you for sharing your favorite grandson's plans with me, but they don't interest me much. What do you want from me, Nancy?" The neighbor rolled her eyes in surprise. "Why do you pretend to be a silly fish, Evelyn? My grandson's got his sights set on your lot. What's not to understand? The house is registered to you, as far as I know. When Molly died, her mansion and the land passed into your hands? Am I wrong? What of it?" The old woman swung her hand like she was holding a saber. "All right, I can see it's no use talking to you. Benjamin will be here soon, but he'll talk differently. Don't threaten me with Nancy, and tell your Benjamin I'm not going to sell the house. Let him count on your inheritance." The old woman shook her dry fists even harder. "For your malicious character, Evelyn, God will not give you children." The old woman knew how to hurt her uncooperative neighbor. She had hit the sorest spot. Evelyn grabbed a dry twig lying on the floor and threw it at Nancy. "You old hag, go away." The log came down with a whistle somewhere in the bushes, but the young woman realized that she had hit exactly the target. Nancy from afar began to send threats. "I'll file a police report on you. You'll get jail time for self-harm." Evelyn no longer paid attention to the shouts of the old woman. She walked slowly towards the house, trying to answer the main question. "But why is all the misfortune dumped on my head?" At her appearance, John perked up. "Oh, is Evelyn mine? Tired? Do you want me to heat up dinner?" My husband acted as if there'd never been a quarrel this morning. He fussed to the kitchen, reporting on the work done. At first, I wanted to work in the garage, but then I thought I'd clean up the stain on the ceiling. Evelyn looked up. The problem spot was covered by a slanted piece of wallpaper of a completely different shade, but the husband was very pleased with his work. Wasn't that better? The woman was so tired from the noisy morning that she twisted her heart. "Yes, darling," almost imperceptible. The praise emboldened the man, and in his mind immediately activated a fantasy track. "Tomorrow I'll dig a trench, or I'll break my legs. It's unlikely we'll be able to bring water into the house this summer anyway. It's gonna take a lot of money. I will complete my project. I got a patent, and then you and I will live. We will go to the south." John noticed that his wife did not share his joy. "Evelyn, what's wrong? Is your back hurting again?" The woman often complained of lower back pain. Often she couldn't get out of bed for days. Then John treated her with ointments and even gave her injections himself, but now it was obvious that his wife was in a bad mood, not because of her back. "Just now, John, I had a fight with Nancy. The old witch has been ambushing me in her vegetable garden. What does she want?" Not her John, but her grandson. Briefly and in general terms, they want our lot in the house. John whistled in surprise, to which Evelyn immediately reacted sharply. "How many times have I told you not to whistle in the house? That's why we're always tight on money." "Oh, come on, all this superstition. Personally, I do not believe in any omens. You better tell me how much they're offering for our house." John looked at his wife with the look of a 5-year-old child who came to the toy store to choose something he liked. "By the way, I shared a desk with Benjamin for 3 years in junior high school. Then his parents moved to the capital. Our locals said that his dad had made it big, and that's the kind of guy who makes money. So it might be something to consider." Evelyn lowered herself gingerly into a chair. "John, are you serious? Or are you joking again?" "What jokes, Evelyn? We're being offered money, and that doesn't happen every day. Think of the prospects. I can finish my project, which in turn will get me a lucrative contract, and then—" "John, why are you always talking about yourself and your plans? This is my home, by the way, and maybe you should ask my opinion about it. And then have you thought about where we're gonna live if we sell the house?" The man looked at his wife with the same childish look. "I'm sorry, I didn't think about it. But we can rent an apartment or part of the house for a while." "All right, John, enough of this nonsense. I'm not selling the house to Benjamin or anyone else. You and your ideas are really going to make me homeless." John remained standing at a loss in the kitchen with a ladle in one hand. The man was trying to understand how he could refuse to accept money that was coming his way. Not a week after the unpleasant conversation with Nancy, the village was blessed with the arrival of Benjamin himself. The entire small population of the village poured out into the street to pay their respects to the iconic personage. Surprisingly, the scene resembled the arrival of royalty in Murom, depicted by the hand of a famous artist, only the place of the Russian empress was occupied by a successful businessman. Benjamin instantly caught the mood of the crowd. He smiled and bowed to the sides. There were, of course, those who looked at it with laughter, but most of them literally devoured their hope with their eyes. "I am glad to see you all, my fellow countrymen. I promised to do everything for the revival of our small homeland. For completeness of the picture, there was not enough candy or money, which by duty could scatter bodyguards. But for gifts, the local oligarch was apparently stingy. However, even without material support, the PR campaign was at a high level. Now everyone in the village was talking about Benjamin's arrival, and Nancy couldn't feel the ground beneath her feet with pride. John decided that he should take the opportunity too, and at dinner he said to his wife, as if by the way, "I think I'd ought to drop in on Benjamin. Maybe he'll remember a schoolmate." Evelyn suddenly supported her husband. "Come in. Maybe he'll at least offer you a job. If a man is planning to build, he'll need specialists. At least you'll be useful." "Of course, Evelyn, I appreciate your opinion, but I'm not a builder. I have a completely different specialty." The man spoke with an obvious challenge, alluding to his engineering degree. But his moment of glory didn't last long, because his wife mercilessly killed the untimely flight of fancy. "Your specialty, John, is sitting on my neck, and I'm tired of it. And you must realize I'm not giving you any more money. You have to start earning your own bread sometime." Another scandal was coming. John had already taken in more air in his lungs to respond with dignity to his wife's perfidy. But at that moment there was a sudden knock at the door. The couple were very surprised to see that Mr. Benjamin himself came to visit them. The owner of the house began to make a fuss about the guest. "Welcome to our hearth. I didn't expect you to think of me, Benjamin, but it's a pleasure." The guest only nodded at the welcoming ritual, but paused. He sat down at the table, which Evelyn was promptly setting, and even drank the cup offered by his host, but that Benjamin traditionally made the first toast to the meeting. The men drank and reached for the pickles, which the hostess put on the table. "Help yourself, dear guest, my mistress makes great pickles." The businessman took another drink. "That's right, John. Only in our village women know how to pickle cucumbers." "Then let's have a drink, because it's uncomfortable to stand on one leg." "Don't think I'm not into this business, but I believe that ancestral traditions should be honored." "I'd agree, but don't pour me any more." "Hypertension. I don't want to die before my time. I've got a lot of work to do." Benjamin was an excellent speaker. He knew where to pause and where to raise the tone a little. Evelyn had briefly attended an art reading club at school, where they were taught how to speak properly. Now she watched the guest with undisguised interest, realizing that he did not appear to them for the sake of an old friendship with John. But the guest began from afar. "John, how many years has it been since you and I used to go trick-or-treating together at recess?" The landlord began to calculate in his mind. "Nearly 30. You left us right after 3rd grade." Benjamin sighed. "Yes, unfortunately, we can't know where life will take its next turn. I didn't think I would return to my home village one day either. But what amazes me the most is how small the world is. Why am I saying this? You're about to find out. Imagine when I shared my plan with my colleagues, there was a person in my team who also came from these places." The guest glared at Evelyn, but she calmly waited for the rest of the story. John was clearly puzzled by this turn of events. "Benjamin, why are you pulling the cat out of the bag? Just tell it like it is." "I didn't mean to offend you." "We're not offended, but let's get to the point, Benjamin. Who's that goose in your office who can't live without our village?" "I think we know who he is. It's Ethan." The plate slipped out of the hands of the surprised hostess. "Uncle Ethan, does he work for you?" "I tell you, it's a small world." After all, the guest had achieved the desired effect and was now enjoying the result. "You see, dear Evelyn, I had a frank conversation with your uncle, during which it became clear that Ethan is very dissatisfied with his grandmother's death warrant. Not only that, but he considers the document invalid and even intends to contest it. Sensing an impending cloud, John intervened in the conversation. But it's impossible. You're wrong, friend. It is possible. After all, it hasn't even been a year since your grandmother died, has it? Or am I wrong, Evelyn? Evelyn felt her mouth go dry. What are you trying to say? My grandmother had her will drawn up and notarized while she was still alive. That's understandable, but you're not a direct heir. But Uncle Ethan refused, and now he's changed his mind. I suggest you reconsider. And remember, I only make a very good offer once and then. Oh, by the way, John, I'm planning to start construction before the fall, so I need reliable people. Can I offer you a job as an old friend? But I'm not a builder. I'm more of an iron worker. That's fine. Will you be foreman or forewoman? Agreed? John stretched out. Well, I'm always ready. Then come over tomorrow. I'm staying at my grandmother's, but it's only temporary. As soon as I get things settled, I'll be back in town. What about construction? That's why I'm looking for reliable people. People who can be trusted with serious business and money. As soon as the door closed behind the guest, John cursed. What a creep, that Uncle Ethan of yours. Evelyn said quietly. I didn't expect him to be so mean either. How much misery has he caused, Mom? He's taking it out on me too. Evelyn's mother and grandmother had carefully avoided talking about her father when she was very young, and she hadn't been much interested in the matter either. But later she tried several times to find out where her father was and why he lived in another country. Uncle Ethan decided to enlighten her niece, Mother's own brother. One day at a family dinner he said, I think, Camille, it's time to tell the girl. Evelyn remembers well the mother's belittling look at her brother. Ethan, please don't. You know perfectly well that William is not to blame. Then who is? No, sweet sister. He left you with a 1-year-old child to go to your uncle's. He traded you and your daughter for money. Suddenly, the grandmother supported her son. Yes, that's exactly what happened. It's you, Camille, because of your blind love, did not finish the institute and could have made it in the people, if not for the early marriage. A 15-year-old girl was uncomfortable listening to her grandmother and uncle reproach her mom for loving her father so much. Evelyn decided to stand up for her mother. Is love a crime? The grandmother asked at her granddaughter. You're too young to reason. When you have children yourself, you'll know what it's like to raise them. I raised 2 of them on my own, worked 2 jobs, and kept piglets, and all for the sake of educating my children. Thank you that at least Ethan became a man, but Camille didn't appreciate my efforts. She fell in love. She got married in her 3rd year, and soon you were born. Grandma was ready to continue the story, but Mom shouted at her. Please do not fool the child's head. It was your efforts that made me a single mother. It was you, Mom, who then played a comedy with your illness when William came to fetch us. It was you who separated daughter and father. After this, the relatives began to shower at each other with reproaches. Evelyn was disgusted with them and ran away to a friend's house. And soon there was a misfortune with my mother. When she was feeding the pigs, and my grandmother had 8 of them, she was attacked by a wild boar. The woman screamed for a long time, but no one heard her. Only late in the evening, Grandma suddenly realized, Evelyn, where's Camille? I saw her come home from work, and then she disappeared. The girl found her mother unconscious. When the hospital x-rayed her, the doctors were shocked. Poor thing. She had multiple fractures, damaged internal organs. Mom was in the hospital for months. She had one operation after another, but she got weaker and weaker every day. Evelyn ran straight to the hospital after school and sat by her sick mother's bedside for hours. Lessons had to be done late at night. Grandmother visited her daughter only 3 times. I have no time to go to hospitals. If I don't feed them in time, they'll go to waste. And Evelyn, you'd be less likely to go there, just for 5 minutes, and that's enough. I can't do without a helper. One day, Evelyn couldn't stand the injustice. Grandma, aren't you ashamed? Mom is your own daughter, and you treat her as if she were your stepdaughter. But everything is for Uncle Ethan, and those pigs, and the damn boar that trampled on Mama. Everything is for him, too. The shocked Molly could not utter a word, and Evelyn cried and screamed with resentment. I heartily wish that boar would die. The old woman immediately came to her senses and slapped her granddaughter. I wish your tongue was dead. The boar weighs over 10 pounds. That evening Evelyn did not come home to spend the night. She spent the night sitting next to her mother, whose condition had deteriorated sharply. The woman was falling into a restless sleep, then calling her. In the morning she asked, "Daughter, at home, in my album there are pictures where we are all together, you and me, and your dad. Don't believe it. He's a very good man. It's just that everything's worked out against us. If I get better, you and I will go to my dad. There's his address right to him." 2 days later, Mom died. Evelyn looked for the picture the dying woman had mentioned in the papers, but she couldn't find it. And then she forgot about that picture, because a completely different life began for her. Now all household chores fell on the fragile shoulders of a 16-year-old girl. After school, she would run home to feed the pigs and chickens. Then she had to weed the beds that stretched as far as the horizon. During summer vacations, when school friends and girlfriends went to the sea with their parents or vacationed in health camps, Evelyn did not unbend her back from morning till late in the evening. The list of her duties was enormous, and her grandmother made sure that every item was completed. Twice a year, Uncle Ethan came in from out of town. He would fill the car to the brim with groceries, and without hiding his pleasure, drive back. The hard labor took its toll on the girl's health. She was found to have a herniated spine, and later doctors discovered a problem in the female side. So John was right about one thing. He did spare her from slave labor when he proposed to become his wife. Molly took the news of her granddaughter's marriage in stride. She threw a tantrum. I'm everything to her, and she decided to throw me away. Ungrateful. The future son-in-law listened to these unfair claims and advised Molly to attract his son to hard labor. To the grandmother, this suggestion amounted to an insult, and she shoved John out the door. It was then that Evelyn first disobeyed her old grandmother and left home with her fiancé. At one time, they were staying with her husband's parents, where John's brother John and his family lived. About a year passed, and Molly showed up for a visit. The woman cried for a long time, complained about her fate, and then fell on her knees in front of her granddaughter and began to ask for her forgiveness. "Forgive me, Evelyn. Forgive me for everything. Since you left me, I can't find a place for myself. Please come back. Live with me at my place. I've used up all the livestock. No, I don't have the health to take care of animals." It was unbearable to watch the humiliation of a native person, and the young people returned to Molly's house. Grandmother behaved quietly, tried not to interfere in the family affairs of her granddaughter. She was often ill, and Evelyn did not leave her bedside for 24 hours, just like when her mother was dying. Molly was very homesick, and she was even more worried about Uncle Ethan. "Evelyn, you should call him." "What's wrong? Why isn't he coming? He forgot his mother." The girl dialed her uncle's number many times, but he immediately referred to the lack of time. John sincerely felt sorry for the old woman. He heard these requests, but only Evelyn once in the heart said everything he thought about her uncle. "That's your Uncle Ethan, you bastard. When the old woman was dying, tending the cattle so that he and his children could eat, then he'd show up. And the helpless mother, he has no time to visit her. For 6 years, the son only once visited his mother, but stayed only an hour. Shortly after this visit, Molly and decided to redo the will in favor of her granddaughter. Shortly before her death, she gave her a photograph of her happy parents holding her in their arms. On the back of the photo was an address in English. "It's all my fault, Evelyn. I didn't want Camille to go abroad, and I separated her from William. He was a positive guy, he was already a candidate, and he was invited to work there. And then we came to get you, and I wouldn't let Camille go. But the worst part was that when he called once, I lied and said that Camille had married a good man." Evelyn listened to her grandmother's confession, but her anger was gone. She realized that nothing could be changed and forgave her grandmother. After her death, there was only one close person left in the whole world. Evelyn was afraid that one day he would betray her, but there is a belief that what one fears will happen one day. Just as Benjamin had promised, in August a big construction project was underway in the village. John enthusiastically took up the task assigned to him. From early in the morning until late at night, he was at the site he was entrusted with. With his wife, he rarely shared his work, answering her questions unambiguously. "Everything is normal. The work is going on. The salary drops into the account." But a month passed, then the second, but the promised salary was not brought to the house. He completely forgot about his super project and rarely visited the garage. As it turned out later, Evelyn had no idea what her husband had done with other people's money. It all came out of the blue. One day John came home earlier than usual, his face pale as chalk and his hands shaking. "Evelyn, I need money right away. Lots of money." The woman's heart sank in a premonition of bad things to come. "What's wrong?" That simple question sent her husband into a rage. For the first time in his life, he took a swing at her. "Why do you feign saintly naivete? I thought I told you in plain language that I need money, and it's urgent. Are you my wife or not?" Evelyn was silent. She was shivering, and her hands and feet were ice cold. At last she got over her excitement. "I too, John, asked you in plain language. What's wrong? I have a right to know. You're singing about your rights again. This is all your fault, sending me to work for that Ashole. You don't have enough money. I think you're the one who's been stealing it from me. What should I do this time? Help me. For the last time, let's sell the Dan house while that bastard's offer still stands. Can you explain to me properly why this is so urgent? All right, look. I just got screwed again, and I've decided to temporarily divert some of the money Benjamin gave me for materials to another project. What was it? There was a lucrative venture, and I thought I'd invest in it for a nice dividend. But it didn't work out. I ran into some crooks, and today, as luck would have it, Benjamin demanded all the invoices. That's the story. Evelyn didn't want to hear from the man anymore. She didn't care anymore. All right, if we sell this house, or if Uncle Ethan sues us for it anyway, where do you think you're going to live? That was a question John couldn't answer. Uncle Ethan showed up in the morning. Well, weren't you expecting young people? I see that I've been on your heads like a snowball. But it's a good thing, because you can put all the dots on the inheritance question. Well, I filed a lawsuit to review this case, of course. I hired a good lawyer, so not to spoil the nerves of neither you nor myself. I suggest you move out of your parents' house. After all, anyway, then the bailiffs will put you out, and that the judges will decide the case in my favor. I do not doubt at all. I'm the son and Evelyn is the granddaughter. The law is on my side. And the fact that my mother made a will before she died, she wasn't in her right mind. I've got the certificate. In short, I'll give you 24 hours. Uncle Ethan left. Evelyn began to pack her things. John asked in surprise, "Where are you going?" "Wherever I want to go." "What about me?" "Don't you realize that Benjamin will roll me for money?" At that moment, the door opened wide and the autumn wind blew in. John looked at Benjamin with horror. "Wow! And we were just thinking about you and your wife, just like the proverb says. Think of something and it will appear." The joke turned out to be a bad one, and the next moment, John's body slammed into the opposite wall. "Why, Benjamin?" "You know why." Ignoring Evelyn and John, who was in pain, the guest defiantly set the table in the center of the living room. "Well, are we going to joke again, or are we going to talk seriously?" "I'm talking to both of you." "And to you, Evelyn, that goes for you too." "What's it got to do with me? He wasted your money, deal with him." "No, that wasn't the deal." "John, your husband? What's that supposed to mean?" "Because my guys are gonna cut him to ribbons. He's a big hit, but this time he won't make it between construction sites." "I need the money." John made it out of the corner. "Benjamin, honestly, I'll make it up to you. I'll work on your construction site for free for a year." "That's a good point, but it's not you, Ashole, it's your wife. And for you as a punishment, I have picked up another mission, and I don't think you will like it. But there are no other options if you want to live." John began to crawl on his knees in front of Benjamin. It was disgusting to watch this picture of humiliation. And Evelyn grabbed her suitcase, but the guest squeezed her hand, but the woman tried to break free. "Let go, you're hurting me." But Benjamin squeezed the vise even harder. Evelyn screamed, "Madam, it will hurt you even more if I entrust you to my boys. They like to work on women, so you'd better keep your head down." "Well, you're loaning your woman out." "I am, Benjamin. You can have her forever." Evelyn watched her husband tearfully crawl at the feet of his former classmate. She felt no pity for him, only contempt and disdain. Benjamin read all of this in the betrayed woman's gaze. He took her suitcase with one hand and led her to the exit. At the door, Evelyn turned around as if she were saying goodbye to her past life forever. "Come on, you don't want to disturb yourself with such an unpleasant sight." Benjamin pushed the woman lightly toward the exit. The door slammed shut, but outside they could hear John wailing at the top of his voice. "Evelyn, stay. I shall perish without you." The businessman spat contemptuously. "You wretch, it's you who will be doomed if you stay with this man. Forgive me for some inflection, but I'm really ready to tear John apart. He's been such a jerk to me. I don't know how to untie myself now." Benjamin's words sounded quite human, and Evelyn looked at him in surprise. "I don't understand. Do you really want me to be your slave?" "Yes and no." "Come, let's talk. I have a proposition for you. You can refuse, of course, but then I'll ask you to return all the money your husband has squandered. Anyway, he's still your husband, but you'll still take the house, won't you?" Benjamin nodded. "I will, and no one can stop me, as you have already realized. But the only problem is that the money the house is worth won't be enough to pay off the debt. Do you have any idea how much he cut me off? You see, on the one hand, I don't care about anyone who lives here. You're a smart woman, I think you know that, and I don't care about your idiot husband. The fact that I'll give him a chance is a big deal for you." Benjamin stopped in front of his car, opened the door for Evelyn. "You all believe in miracles here in the village. Miracles don't happen." In the city, they would have killed the whole family for that amount of money, and I'm talking to you. He put Evelyn in the car. They drove off. Evelyn felt her heart pounding. I want to tell you right away, Evelyn, if you think about running away, your John will be totally screwed. So a man's life depends on you. Evelyn understood now. So sorry, so sorry. And what should I do? Most importantly, for how long? How long, I haven't counted it yet. It all depends on your work. But what to do now, you'll see. They drove to the edge of the village. There was no way to see it from the village, and now Evelyn was numb. It had changed completely in a matter of months. Huge greenhouses stood in rows, apples and pears were planted, and some other trees that were unfamiliar to Evelyn. A large wooden building stood a little to the side. Here, someone should be in charge of all this, not only to work, but also to make others work and to be responsible. Do you understand, Evelyn? Not really. But look, you'll do a good job, and everyone should do a good job, and I'll be there to watch. And if you don't do a good job, the debt won't go down. And if the debt doesn't go down, you'll have to work here for a long time. Only now Evelyn realized what a trap she'd fallen into. And John will work off the debt too, won't he? Benjamin laughed. No, Evelyn, your husband's as useless as a goat's milk. Not only is he an idler, but he's also a thief. So you, and only you, will repay the debt. But that's not fair. Evelyn almost cried. Where have you seen justice in our world, Evelyn? Besides, you heard yourself that your husband gave you to me for debts. I'm going to the police. The woman grasped the doorknob with determination. Of course you will. I've got plenty of testimony about how you and your husband cleaned me out together. Believe me, for that amount of money, you two will go to jail for a long time. You're such scum. Benjamin laughed again. I have to agree with you there. If I wasn't trash, I'd be living, like you and John, in utter poverty and dung. Shall we go? I'll help you carry the suitcase. They came to a wooden building. There was no other word for it, as Evelyn realized she wasn't the first one here. A woman came out to them, looking more like a man. Well, what else did they bring? Is it any good, or is it just as inept as the others? Well, Wendy, that's what you're here for, to keep everyone working like a bee. Wendy laughed. You know I have a fly to collect honey. Benjamin turned around and walked to the car without saying goodbye. Evelyn caught up with him. Don't forget to count the debt, so I know how long I have to work here. I'll do that when I have time. Don't worry, you'll be working here for a long time. Still, I might want to pay you back in money. Benjamin looked at her like she was crazy and went on his way. As it turned out, there were already several unfortunates like Evelyn here. One was working off her husband's debt, who had recklessly wrecked Benjamin's car, and her husband was at home babysitting. They had 2 children. The second had racked up credit, and Benjamin had saved her. She thought he was a kind man and ended up here. In fact, they were all here voluntarily, well, or almost voluntarily, because if any of them left, quit their jobs, the problems would pour in like a cornucopia. Benjamin didn't keep anyone by force. You could go home, you could go home. True, Evelyn didn't have a home. She got out a week later, wanted to show John what her hands had become and spit in his face. But she came out and the house was gone. In place of the house, where her favorite roses had grown, construction was in full swing. Evelyn cried and turned back. Evelyn? She turned around. Standing next to her was Grandma Clara. She used to come to them often when her grandmother was alive. She used to swear at her grandmother, but she didn't take offense. They had been friends for a long time. Hello, Baba Clara. Evelyn sighed. I don't understand something. The house has been sold. There's no one here. I saw John leaving with his suitcases. Why aren't you with him? I'm not with him. I'm working. For Benjamin? They say he doesn't pay at all. He's trying to cheat, or are people lying? She waved her hand and cried, What are you, a girl? Tell me, what happened to you? I haven't seen you in 6 months, and already you've changed so much. Evelyn and Grandma Clara sat down on the grass, and Evelyn told her everything. She knew she couldn't help her, but she felt a little better. The old woman shook her head. I don't know who's the bigger bitch in this situation. You're John or Benjamin? But Benjamin is understandable. He grew up to be a bastard from a young age. But John, I'd kill him. It's all your fault, Evelyn. You should have sent him to work, not let him eat. Where have you seen that? A big forehead sitting on his grandmother's neck. Baba Clara spat and sat and thought, That's it, Evelyn. You should look for your father. Evelyn looked at Clara in amazement. And you know about him. Well, who doesn't know about him? But if you're younger, but William was a good guy. Molly, she's such a bastard. She looks like Benjamin. What's she been doing with this farm all her life? She's got herself a golden coffin or something. She couldn't let Camille go, not out of love, but because someone had to look after her farm. It can't be, Grandmother said. She just didn't want to part with us. Clara waved her hand. You can think what you like, of course, but I knew your grandmother much better than that. Never needed anyone for her but her Ethan. God damn it, every man is a piece of shit. Maybe we're in an abnormal zone here. Clara wondered. Evelyn smiled. Clara's grandmother had always loved everything unusual and otherworldly. Her daughter fought with her as much as she could. Twice they extinguished the house, because Clara lit candles from the evil power and forgot about them. All right, we managed. Once my daughter wanted to heat the stove. The frosts were fierce then. She opened the flap, and instead of a place to put firewood, there was a fresh brickwork. It's good that she didn't have time to grasp it. They broke it, and Clara too. She was making a hole in the world. Grandma was good at everything, but if something got into her head, the old lady never saw Evelyn again. She quickly got up, looked around, and authoritatively declared to herself, That's right, abnormal. We must save the world. She walked briskly into the village. Evelyn sighed. Yes, you'll have a hard time with her. Who knows when she'll get it into her head? When Evelyn returned, the neighbor was lying on her stomach, texting on her laptop. Lisa, listen, is it real, for example, in the same social networks to find a person abroad? Of course it's real. Why do you ask? Did you find a rich relative who is ready to pay for you? Oh, come on. I just wanted to try to find one. So let's try. I've talked to my folks. I've cried, so I'm free. How much longer? 2 months, and then I'm free if I don't get any more fines. Evelyn sighed. By her calculations, she'd be working here for almost a year, and that was if there were no fines, and fines came very quickly. She pulled out a picture, showed it to Lisa, who started typing something quickly. Look, there it is. Evelyn's palms were sweating. There's what? A man with that name. Evelyn, look, he's online. Lisa, don't speak in riddles? Well, he's online now. Come on, what should I write him? Nothing, are you crazy? No, what do you mean you don't text him? You need him for something. Evelyn remembered John, remembered her home, her whole life, and gave up. At least it's an outlet. Write hello, William. This is Evelyn, Camille's daughter. Lisa chuckled. You're like a letter from the front. Lisa, I'll be quiet, I'll be quiet. Oh, look, I read it. Aye, She hasn't said a word yet. Probably won't answer. Evelyn lay down and was just about to doze off when Lisa pushed her. He did. That's a hell of a thing to say. Well, read it, and I'm going to go have a smoke so I don't get in the way. Evelyn looked at Lisa gratefully and sat down in front of the laptop. She read the words, wiped her tears, reread again. Lisa returned and saw Evelyn all in tears. She sighed. That's what, Mother. The laptop is on your bed, and I need to sleep. I don't want to get it tomorrow. Don't stay up too long. You have to work tomorrow, too. William apologized for not convincing Camille to go against Molly's wishes, for being resentful and not letting on for years. Then work got in the way, one thing and another. When he woke up, he decided he didn't need him anymore. Camille's been married a long time, and the daughter probably calls that man Daddy. Mom had never been married, not even one day. William was silent for a while. Evelyn thought he would never answer again. I had the thought, but then I decided that no matter how cruel Molly was, she wouldn't lie like that. So she did. Do you have a wife, kids? Evelyn, you don't have to tell me. I have no one. I tried to get married. I lasted 6 months twice, but I called my wives, Camille. And then I stopped trying. And God didn't give me children. I mean, He did, but I lost them. But it's not your fault, is it? Another long pause. It's my fault. It's always the man's fault, because he should be stronger, wiser, smarter, you know? It's all my fault. And now I'm dying. I don't have much time left, and I was still afraid to write to you. Dying? Why? There's Evelyn, a disease that doesn't look at places or people. It just goes and takes whoever it wants with it. Of course, Evelyn knew everything. She felt tears running down her cheeks. It was so hurtful, so painful to realize that she had just found her father and wouldn't even get to see him. Evelyn, why don't we video call tomorrow? Oh, I don't know how to do that. If Lisa says it's okay, she'll help you. So that's not you in the picture. No, of course I'll ask her. See you tomorrow. Evelyn has been getting reprimands all day. She got so many fines that Lisa couldn't take it anymore. She was waiting in the greenhouse next to Evelyn. What's wrong with you today? Lisa, you see, that man you found yesterday, he's my father. And Evelyn briefly told her the story of her family. Lisa exhaled. Wow, I'm sorry. Your family is a mess. Evelyn, so maybe he's rich? Evelyn stared at her with an uncomprehending stare. Even if he is, which I doubt, so what? So what? He could just pay off that creep, and you'd be free. Oh, Lisa, you say that too. A man dies and I have to ask for money? We've never met. What's the big deal? You're so interesting, you're used by everyone, and you can't. I won't. If you'll let me, we'd like to talk on the video conference today. Oh, you're such an idiot. Tell me, of course. What do you want me to do? As soon as my father saw her, he cried, God, you look just like Camille. How is she? Mom's dead. Dead? And Grandma? She's gone too. They talked for almost an hour. Then they said goodbye. They're putting me in the hospital tomorrow. They won't let me die in peace. And then I'll write to you again. All right, I'll be waiting. When a crying Evelyn returned the laptop, and Lisa asked, So did you tell him about your life? No, why? You should see him, he's so sick. Oh, Evelyn, oh, stupid. Evelyn fell asleep almost immediately. She woke up in the night and saw Lisa sitting on her laptop. She even asked, What's wrong, what? Lisa jumped up. What? No, the kid has a fever. Go back to sleep. I'm going to bed too. And the workday began again. Evelyn learned to ignore the pain in her back, learned not to look at her bloody hands. She just worked and counted the days. What was the use of counting them? 5 would be taken away, 2 added for fines. Benjamin showed up from time to time. He seemed to take a special pleasure in humiliating Evelyn, probably because she was a native of the village where the oligarch himself was born and almost grew up. "Evelyn, you don't look so good." Admittedly, when you lived with your husband, you looked much better. But although it's probably much better to live like behind a stone wall, and he chuckled at his own joke, Evelyn was silent. She wanted to slap his fat face, but she knew she couldn't. A week passed, then another. Every night when Lisa opened her laptop, Evelyn looked at her questioningly, but she just shook her head. Evelyn's father was no longer online. The day came when the disgruntled warden gave Lisa her papers. Everyone came out to see her off. Lisa took Evelyn aside. "I'm sorry. I'm probably the reason your dad hasn't been in touch anymore. But you know, to me, it's better than no father at all." "I don't know what you mean." Evelyn looked at Lisa and really didn't understand anything. Lisa sighed. "The day you talked to him, I texted him back, and I told him all about your story, about your debt, about your husband, about everything. And he said he'd help, and then I guess he changed his mind." "Lisa, why?" Lisa shook her head. "Because, is he a father or not? He's never helped you once in his life, and now he can. You may or may not be offended, but I think I did the right thing." Lisa left and Evelyn returned to her room lost. Now, even if her dad does show up online, she won't know about it. Well, then it's not fate. 7 more months ahead, no time to think and dream at all. Just before Christmas, when the main job was over and the new one was just beginning, Evelyn decided to go to the store. She had nowhere to live, of course, but Christmas is Christmas. Even the warden had gone home for the weekend, though no one could believe she had a family at all. At the store, the clerk crossed her arms when she saw Evelyn. "Evelyn, you?" "I'm Kathy." "Why are you looking at me like I'm a ghost?" "Well, Evelyn, no offense, but you've aged 20 years. "I know, Kathy, I know. Why don't you sell it to me quick before somebody else does?" "Yeah, sure." Kathy ran around the store, picking up what Evelyn was showing and talking nonstop. "What, do you work for our tycoon?" "I do, but they say he doesn't pay at all, and the people aren't happy. He evicted people from their homes, not the whole village, but only those who couldn't fight back. And he's ruined everything with his construction." Evelyn grinned. It can't be. Remember how they greeted him, almost throwing their hats in the air? Kathy looked at her. "You shouldn't say that, Evelyn. People really thought the village would be revived, but now it feels like he's a landowner and everyone else is a serf." Evelyn was silent. She knew what serfs were like. "Did you hear yours?" Evelyn was on her way out, but stopped. "Yours is playing in town." "Huh. Well, he lost a lot of money. They say he was beaten up for his debts, even hospitalized. And then our people met him. He said he was getting married. An old woman, but rich." Evelyn laughed. "Oh, John, he wants to ride a crooked mare to heaven." The mood lightened a little. Evelyn took the road she had not taken in a long time, so as not to see an empty place instead of her home. But the place was no longer empty. There was a new house, which was made under the old. She stood for a while and went on her way. She didn't even notice how a figure separated from the house and followed her. "Excuse me, could you please tell me how I can find Evelyn?" She stopped. She didn't know this man, and she'd never seen him before. In fact, he was kind of strange and dressed differently and had a fashionable haircut. "I'm Evelyn. Who are you?" "Oh, for some reason I thought it was you." You look just like your mom." He pulled out the exact same picture she had. My heart sank. "Who are you?" "My name is James. I'm your father's executor." Now Evelyn realized what confused her the most. Was this man pronouncing words too correctly, like a speech therapist or a foreigner? Is there somewhere we can talk, but out of sight? "I take it we don't need eyes on us just yet." "Well, if only on the shore, where the kids go in summer, but now there's no one there." They walked to the river. Evelyn shook the snow off the bench and sat down. "What are you doing? The bench is cold." She smiled. "I can't stand. My back really hurts." She pulled her hand out of the mitten, and the man rounded his eyes when he saw her bruised, haggard hands. "Why are you like this?" Evelyn quickly hid her hands in the mittens. "What did you want to talk to me about?" "Is Papa dead?" "Yes. William passed away 2 months ago, but in the hospital, in the presence of a notary, witnesses, he gave clear orders regarding you. We never got a chance to talk, to sit down." Evelyn wiped away a tear. "What orders?" The man sat down beside her and opened the folder. "The orders are very simple. William instructed me to give you everything he had. I suspect you won't agree to go abroad. He sold everything he had there 2 weeks before he died. All the money, all the assets and more are now yours. I, as his advisor and assistant, will stay with you for the first time. I will help you, so that no one will cheat you, so that you will be able to invest the money profitably. As soon as you understand everything, I will be able to leave you. I'm aware of your problem. The first thing I suggest is that you pay off your debt, which will cause a lot of trouble for the person who dumped it on you. The second thing is to get a good night's rest and a good night's sleep, and only then do business." Evelyn stared at him in amazement. "Money so much that it's enough for a debt." The man smiled. "Your money is enough to pay 1,000 such debts." He couldn't stand it, he laughed. "You have such a face now." William was a very wealthy man. His work was insanely valued, but he was far from the richest. "So how do I get in touch with this man?" "Through the warden." James's eyebrows flew upwards. "I'm sorry. I must have misheard you." Evelyn laughed now. "Oh, now you should see your face. Let's go down the road and I'll tell you all about it. Tell me, is English your first language?" "Oh, my grandmother." James told her a whole story about how his grandmother had once fled America, but made her children and grandchildren speak only English at home. By the time Evelyn finished her story, they had reached the wooden structure where Wendy stood with her arms at her sides. "What's up, Queen?" "Another fine." Evelyn wanted to start making excuses, as she usually did, but James stepped forward. "I beg your pardon, who are you?" "Who are you?" "I'm Evelyn's attorney. I'd very much like to speak to the man to whom Evelyn allegedly owes money." Wendy, who hadn't even had a chance to change out of her city clothes yet, reached into her pocket for her phone. "I'll call now, of course." "Lawyer." "Well, that's funny. Please tell Mr. Benjamin to grab his lawyer or notary. Only in the presence of 2 persons, we will transfer the debt to him." Wendy already looked at James in amazement and stepped farther away to explain to the owner what was the matter. The girls came out of the outbuilding. They looked at Evelyn with envy. She gave them a hug. "Don't you think I'm not leaving you? James says he will take Benjamin at once, and very soon he will be where he ought to be." The girls sighed, hugged Evelyn, and asked her to come and see them, even if it didn't work out. Benjamin arrived an hour later. In that time, Evelyn and those who worked with her had time to decorate the Christmas tree in the yard. Strangely, Wendy didn't even chase the others away to work. She sat and quietly pondered whether she should run away already or whether she could still work. "Who's so wealthy around here?" James stood up. "Good afternoon. I'm Evelyn's attorney. She'd like to pay you some money. You, in turn, must give a receipt and write that you have no claims against her." "Oh, I can't believe it, Evelyn. Are you a foreigner or something?" "That's right. I was Evelyn's father's attorney and trustee, and now I'm helping Evelyn with what's called an inheritance, and the big inheritance." Benjamin's smile faded a little. He remembered those conversations from his childhood, when adults had said that Evelyn had a father abroad, but no one knew for sure, and it turned out to be true. The inheritance, apparently, is not bad at all, since even from there the man flew. After 2 o'clock, Benjamin, sweating, looked at the departing couple. The man who had come with him said, "Oh, Benjamin, the guy is very competent. He can twist this receipt so that you will not feel bad. If I were you, I'd wrap it up real quick and sit tight." "No way. I was not born to be told what to do by Benjamin." The man shook his head. "Well, that's for you to say. It's my business to warn you. And yes, and I'm sorry, I can't work with you anymore. I don't feel like sitting down for company." He got into his car and drove away quickly. Benjamin turned around and saw the women who worked for him, or rather worked off their debts. "What are you looking at? You can leave, but only temporarily. Whoever wants to can continue working. The salary is twice as much." After 20 minutes, he and Wendy were the only ones left. Wendy took out a travel bag. "You, Benjamin, have calculated me. I'm going too." He looked at her angrily. "Well, you'll get around. You have to work, and you're running away." "Well, I'll get by. I think the journalists in our town would be very interested to hear me." Wendy laughed. She very rarely laughed, and rightly so. Her laughter was like the bleating of a goat. Benjamin threw a wad of money on the table and walked out. James brought Evelyn to the most beautiful hotel in town. "This is your room. Mine is across the hall. You get some rest and sleep, and I'll be there, say 5 o'clock. We'll order dinner, and I'll give you everything. And then we'll figure it out as we go along." Okay. Thank you very much." She didn't get much sleep. She took a bath, dried her hair, thought about buying some cream. Her hands were sore. Her skin chapped from work. Decided that later, tonight, to rest, but she never got to sleep. In the evening, James handed her a card. "This is your card. It's automatic. You can use it to pay for anything you want. Here's the paperwork. It's new. I haven't activated it yet. This is what you need to read. Here's the patent information. You are now the owner of a brand of healing equipment. When you get up to speed, you'll need to renegotiate with some of the companies that manufacture them." Evelyn looked at him with those eyes. "Don't be afraid of anything. You'll figure it all out, and I'll help you. You have very tired eyes. I suggest we split up and go to bed. And tomorrow, you could go to the barber shop. I don't know, what else do women need to be happy? All the business can wait." "Thank you, James. Can I ask you a question?" "Yes, of course. You're here with me, but I suppose you have a family waiting for you at home?" He froze for a second. "No, my family died. My wife and young son were killed in the mountains. I didn't want to live either. If it weren't for your father, we wouldn't be talking right now. Please forgive me." "It's okay. You didn't know. Good night to you." To be honest, Evelyn was even a little tired of having fun. In the morning, while James was probably asleep, she quietly left the room. Through the night, she slept like she was a carefree infant. She waved for a cab. The car immediately stopped in front of her. "Where are we going?" "Do you know where we have expensive, fashionable clothing stores in the city?" The elderly man smiled. "I know everything." 15 minutes later, he stopped at a magician's shop. "He's so handsome." She paid the cab driver and went inside. A woman immediately approached her. "What are you interested in?" Evelyn looked around and answered with a smile. "Everything." The woman raised an eyebrow, immediately snapped her fingers, and two young girls appeared beside her. "Cindy, lingerie, Kelly, dress and suits, and I'll take care of outerwear." 2 o'clock Evelyn was like being in a fashion show. She tried on so many things. Most she put off to buy. One outfit, a pantsuit paired with a short mink coat, she really liked. The woman who met her suddenly said, "Wait, you can't go outside in those shoes." She quickly dialed someone's number. And already in 10 minutes, Evelyn did not even have time to finish her coffee. A girl with several boxes appeared in the store. "Now we're all set. Do you want your clothes packed? Can you throw them away?" The woman smiled. "With great pleasure. There's a great beauty parlor nearby. The owner is a friend of mine. If you want, I'll call and ask to be taken off the waiting list." "Oh, thank you. I'd love to." The beauty parlor was literally 2 houses down. Next to the entrance to the salon where the grocery store entrance was, Evelyn smiled to herself. A year ago, she would have chosen that entrance. John had been stomping outside the store for an hour now. What kind of person was Miranda? She'd gone to get something nice for dinner and had been at the store for an hour. On the one hand, it's good, because I don't have to listen to her stupid jokes and endure her endless touching. On the other hand, I can't leave. Miranda already bought him a car. It may not be the most expensive, but John's never had one. And she promised that if he behaved well, she'd pay off his debt. It wasn't a huge debt, but John had nowhere to get it, and they could beat his head off for it. So he was on his best behavior, trying to do his best. "John, are you there?" He turned around sharply. Oh, how he hated unexpected meetings with acquaintances, because most of them owed him money. "Kathy?" "Hi." It was just the clerk from the village store. "You didn't come to the city from your village, did you?" "Yeah, I did. I need to pick up a few things." "Yeah, there's nothing in the village." Kathy took a look at the car. "I see you bought a car." John grimaced. "Oh, don't. Evelyn works there, and you're so bad." "It's not my fault Benjamin picked it out." Kathy raised an eyebrow in surprise. "I wasn't going to. And Evelyn's not working. She paid that Benjamin, and she's free to go. In fact, her lawyer made such a mess of it that he shut his company down in a flash." "Kathy, are you confused?" "What's her lawyer?" "Where from?" "Oh, you probably don't know anything." Evelyn's father turned up and died. And he lived abroad. He was a millionaire, even more. So now Evelyn is the heiress to the whole fortune. "You're lying." "I didn't think so. The women who worked there told me that her lawyer said she'd put everyone in jail and buy them all." Kathy was pleased with the effect it had. Of course, no Broads had said anything, but let the creep know. Kathy went about her business, and John wondered, what does that mean? His wife is like a cheese and butter, and he has to live with an old woman to get by on a trifle. It's not right. What we need to do is this. We've got to get back to Evelyn. John's mind was already churning with the most fantastic ideas. He turned around and became numb. A cab that had stopped nearby was being driven by a woman. Or rather, it wasn't a woman, it was a queen. Expensive fur coat, hairdo, high-heeled boots. John rubbed his eyes. No, there could be no mistake. It was Evelyn. While he was thinking, the cab drove off, taking his wife with it. "Oh, you weren't lying, Kathy." Before he could think, A shrill voice came from across the street. "John! John, why are you standing there like a statue? Or do you think I'm going to carry the bags myself to feed you?" John jerked and turned around. His Miranda was standing on the front porch of the store. Fat, 15 years older than him, wealthy, as he now realized, very relatively wealthy Miranda. "What are you looking at? Get the bags." John saw how passers-by paid attention to them, how they smiled. He moved towards Miranda, walked over, pulled out his car keys and threw them at her. "Fuck you. Find yourself another asshole." "What? You've got some nerve. You won't get a dime. You can get your ass cut off in the back alley for debt." But John was already striding down the street, thinking how he could find out where Evelyn was. Certainly not in the village. She's got nowhere to live. Oh, I should have asked Kathy more. John had to go to the village. He even had to spend the night at a neighbor's house. But in 3 days he had gathered all the information he needed. The only thing left was to borrow money for flowers. He couldn't go to his wife empty-handed, could he? Evelyn studied the papers. For the past hour, she had been familiarizing herself with the techniques that helped people get back on their feet. It was confusing at first, then interesting, and by the end of the reading, she was sure it was a real miracle. She had even read many testimonials when even those who were considered hopeless started walking. I mean, it's so necessary, but I understand it's all just overseas. Yes, there is something like that here, but only in the capital. Evelyn thought for a moment. James, correct me if I'm wrong, if such a hospital is located in nature, but for example, in our village, it would be more useful, wouldn't it? The man smiled faintly. What can I say? Well done. Immediately grasped the essence, all thought out. Of course, you see, without walks, sunbaths, and all that, the treatment is much longer. It's a pity Benjamin took our village. We have such nature there. You know, Evelyn, you and I are alike after all. I really liked it there too. Everything is so real, so natural, isn't it? And Benjamin, perhaps it's time to take care of him. You know, to free the village from his yoke. Is that possible? Nothing is impossible in this world, especially if you have money. By the way, I looked at the location of the houses. It would make a great hospital, where the strongest of the world can improve their health. And that's money, and that's a lot of money, and that's jobs. James, if we do it, we'll be the biggest smarties of all. He smiled. After Evelyn had returned from her girls' camping trip, he had not recognized her at first. When he did, he was confused. She couldn't have been that beautiful. When he realized she could have been, he finally died. Now the most important thing was not to show her how he felt about her, because it would turn out that he had come along with the money to the Harris. They discussed some details, and James went to his room. The phone rang. "Evelyn, there's a man here asking for you. He's dying to see you." "Who?" "It's your husband." "My what?" "My husband. I'll be right down. You can't let him in here." She left the room and ran into James. "Evelyn, your face is gone." "What happened?" "Nothing, I'm fine." And she walked briskly toward the elevator. James stood for a moment and followed. What's going on? He's supposed to be guarding her. He immediately recognized the man who tried to hug Evelyn. She pushed his arms away. "John, what do you want? How dare you show your face to me?" "Evelyn, I'm your husband. This is a temporary thing. I've already filed for an annulment." "What annulment? I'll show you." The sound of breaking glass rang in John's head. No, he won't give up his dream. Evelyn is his wife. When he dresses up, he'll look cool too. He won't invent something so simple. He'll invent something worthwhile because they have money. Evelyn, you just don't realize what the future holds. What future? Do you want me to tell you? I don't. And don't even come near me. You're nothing but trouble, John. Learn to live on your own. I don't get it. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm dead serious. John grinned wickedly. You mean you need John to get you out of the mud, but you don't need John to get you out of the money? I repaid you handsomely. In case you haven't forgotten, I've been working off your debt. You gave me away just like a thing so that I could earn money for your entertainment. John couldn't take it anymore. You shouldn't have done that. I was getting ready. I bought flowers. Who needs you like that? You can't even have children. You're an inferior. Evelyn looked at him. If anyone in this life is incomplete, it's you. John didn't realize how it happened. It was just so painful to realize that nothing would change, that he would not be able to live a beautiful and rich life. And he already had so many images in his head. He hit Evelyn and swung again. All the hurt and pain was in his fist. John wanted to cry, and she was to blame for everything. It didn't work the second time. Some man kicked him so hard that John bent down and gulped for a long time. Hotel staff rushed to them, and someone called the police. 2 weeks later, Evelyn and James arrived in the village. Benjamin had been taken into custody by people who were competent in the matter. He was in more trouble than you could count. Nancy had not left the house at all. Benjamin owed wages to the whole village. Evelyn knew perfectly well that she had to talk to the people. Rumors were circulating, but people didn't know what was what, and that was why they were so gloomy. The village people, who had always preferred stability and dimensionality, were very frightened when a large crowd gathered near their car. Evelyn spoke up. The only thing left was to borrow money for flowers. He couldn't go to his wife empty-handed, could he? Evelyn studied the papers. For the past hour, she had been familiarizing herself with the techniques that helped people get back on their feet. It was confusing at first, then interesting, and by the end of the reading, she was sure it was a real miracle. She had even read many testimonials when even those who were considered hopeless started walking. I mean, it's so necessary, but I understand it's all just overseas. Yes, there is something like that here, but only in the capital. Evelyn thought for a moment. James, correct me if I'm wrong, if such a hospital is located in nature, but, for example, in our village, it would be more useful, wouldn't it? The man smiled faintly. What can I say? Well done. Immediately grasped the essence, all thought out. Of course. You see, without walks, sunbaths, and all that, the treatment is much longer. It's a pity Benjamin took our village. We have such nature there. You know, Evelyn, you and I are alike after all. I really liked it there too. Everything is so real, so natural, isn't it? And Benjamin, perhaps it's time to take care of him. You know, to free the village from his yoke. Is that possible? Nothing is impossible in this world, especially if you have money. By the way, I looked at the location of the houses. It would make a great hospital, where the strongest of the world can improve their health. And that's money, and that's a lot of money, and that's jobs. James, if we do it, we'll be the biggest smarties of all. He smiled. After Evelyn had returned from her girls' camping trip, he had not recognized her at first. When he did, he was confused. She couldn't have been that beautiful. When he realized she could have been, he finally died. Now the most important thing was not to show her how he felt about her, because it would turn out that he had come along with the money to the heiress. They discussed some details, and James went to his room. The phone rang. Evelyn, there's a man here asking for you. He's dying to see you. Who? It's your husband. My what? My husband. I'll be right down. You can't let him in here. She left the room and ran into James. "Evelyn, your face is gone." "What happened?" "Nothing, I'm fine." And she walked briskly toward the elevator. James stood for a moment and followed. What's going on? He's supposed to be guarding her. He immediately recognized the man who tried to hug Evelyn. She pushed his arms away. "John, what do you want? How dare you show your face to me?" "Evelyn, I'm your husband. This is a temporary thing. I've already filed for an annulment." "What annulment? I'll show you." The sound of breaking glass rang in John's head. No, he won't give up his dream. Evelyn is his wife. When he dresses up, he'll look cool too. He won't invent something so simple. He'll invent something worthwhile because they have money. Evelyn, you just don't realize what the future holds. What future? Do you want me to tell you? I don't. And don't even come near me. You're nothing but trouble, John. Learn to live on your own. I don't get it. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm dead serious. John grinned wickedly. You mean you need John to get you out of the mud, but you don't need John to get you out of the money? I repaid you handsomely. In case you haven't forgotten, I've been working off your debt. You gave me away just like a thing so that I could earn money for your entertainment. John couldn't take it anymore. You shouldn't have done that. I was getting ready. I bought flowers. Who needs you like that? You can't even have children. You're inferior. Evelyn looked at him. If anyone in this life is incomplete, it's you. John didn't realize how it happened. It was just so painful to realize that nothing would change, that he would not be able to live a beautiful and rich life. And he already had so many images in his head. He hit Evelyn and swung again. All the hurt and pain was in his fist. John wanted to cry, and she was to blame for everything. It didn't work the second time. Some man kicked him so hard that John bent down and gulped for a long time. Hotel staff rushed to them, and someone called the police. 2 weeks later, Evelyn and James arrived in the village. Benjamin had been taken into custody by people who were competent in the matter. He was in more trouble than you could count. Nancy had not left the house at all. Benjamin owed wages to the whole village. Evelyn knew perfectly well that she had to talk to the people. Rumors were circulating, but people didn't know what was what, and that was why they were so gloomy. The village people, who had always preferred stability and dimensionality, were very frightened when a large crowd gathered near their car. Evelyn spoke up. You all have known me since I was a little girl. I've never slacked off, never did a bad thing. And most importantly, I loved our village. I'll answer the most important questions right away. Yes, I received an inheritance. Yes, I bought back from Benjamin everything he had bought here. The crowd erupted in amazement. Wow, so now you're going to put up a factory too? Evelyn smiled. No, I wanted to consult with you. The people waited tensely. She handed out little books to everyone about the technique for the sick and told them at the same time. We can save all the nature, make a name for ourselves, make a lot of jobs. If you all say no, nothing will happen. I promise you. There was no arguing. Grandfather Mason, who was the oldest in the village, came out to the people and said, I think we can trust Evelyn. If it's true, our village will be famous all over the world. When we got back to town, we decided that we should celebrate the beginning of a successful business. James was a little too gloomy. What's the matter with you? You don't seem happy about our success. Of course I am. Except I realized one thing today. You don't need me anymore. You can do this on your own. I can leave. When we got back, I booked a ticket, leaving in the morning. Evelyn realized it was bound to happen sooner or later. But why now? Why not later someday? She could see she liked him. She couldn't let him go. James? Yes. James, could you reschedule the flight? Reschedule? Do you still need me here? Yes, I do. He shrugged. Well, he would suffer for her a little longer. It was unbearable to be around the person he was about to lose. All right, what time do you want to reschedule the flight? He picked up the phone. In the next flight. In this one, I'm not letting you go. James slowly raised his eyes to her, looked at her for a long time, then said, And I don't want you to think I stayed for the money. I don't, but everyone will think so. Do you care what everyone else thinks? James smiled. Evelyn, you're just scared. You don't love me, do you? Do you? And then he blushed. And I do, but... Then I'll drop everything and come with you. In a second, Evelyn was in James's arms. He kissed her and repeated, I've had one desire lately, to kiss you. Now for the rest of your life you'll have to put up with me around you. And I agree. Evelyn laughed happily.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Julia. She had long ago gotten used to the fact that some envious people in the village called her a cripple. What can I say? A wheelchair has never made anyone look good. Well, what could she do then? She vaguely remembered the time when she was young and happy with her own husband. Peter, the couple married in their 3rd year of medical school. She an up-and-coming internist, he a dentist, the hope, so to speak, and the brightest minds in medicine, but had lived together for a long 5 years after their marriage. When Julia was walking home from work one evening and met her old friend, Tony, her first childhood love, with whom she lived in the same house, though on different floors, and with whom she had spent her entire childhood, her school years. And then you met him and married him. Tony often blamed her for Julia marrying Peter and moving to another town. Tony, but you know I love him. And you're my best friend. I invited you to the wedding, by the way, and you never showed it up. Who's supposed to take offense to that? Come on, you know how I feel about your husband, don't you? I don't. After what he did to you on the 3rd or 5th date, I'm sorry, but you should have thought about it by now. And really, Peter went crazy on the 5th date. He got jealous of Tony and raised his hand to the girl in front of witnesses. She only got a slap on the wrist, but maybe Tony's right. She should have thought about it from the start. Is her boyfriend really that good? Is this toxic relationship worth continuing? Tony, let's just change the subject. I just came over for tea and to talk about life. How are you doing anyway? Yeah, I'm good. Yesterday, my boss offered me the job of chief accountant. And I'm still thinking yes or no. What's there to think about? You'll be counting my money later. Yeah, you tell me, when was the last time you were at work or after your husband beat you up and made a scene at work? Did you quit? Yeah, that incident set the line between Julia and Tony. Although what to say, the girl from the first day won the respect and trust of both her patients and superiors, senior doctors, kindness, ability to spread to herself, and listen to many knowledge and ability to accurately diagnose. All this made her popular among old ladies. Yes to her, Julia. There is a clue lined up for you again, the superintendent used to say to her when she was making her morning rounds. Yes, Julia, again I'm without lunch and will sit until evening. But you understand, I know that besides me no one will listen to them, will not believe. Pressure will not prescribe the right treatment. Yes, I have an old man here. And so he comes to me every day like to work, all because he lives alone and has no one to talk to. Julia, you're doing great. And Julia blossomed at work among the old guys in the women's group. But apparently, Peter thought otherwise and saw his girlfriend, and then his wife blossom before his eyes. Even in such a seemingly backward society. Julia, confess, you have a lover at work. Is it a young grad student or a new doctor? Peter, don't be silly. You're the only man I have, the first and the last. You're all I have. And she reached out to him for a kiss. But the man pushed her away and slapped her across the face. Yes, so hard that Julia hit her head on the door jamb and fell, hitting the corner of the table. The consequences were most unfortunate. Bruising, concussion, ER and ICU, and then she was fired from her job. She just couldn't work there. She couldn't stand the slanted stares of her coworkers, the pitying, wailing of her patients. And Julia had become disgusted with herself. Where did I go wrong? How could I let it be thought that I had a lover? Tony, help me out here. Julia, just get away from him. Come to my place. I've got a 3-bedroom, I live by myself. Vaughn, really with a cat. I'll give you a room. What are you holding on to Peter for? She didn't know what kept her with that man. Is it attachment, love, or desire? What desire to be a mother? Maybe it's a good thing she lost the baby after that blow. Otherwise, she simply did not know how to live her life. Then this word often came up in her vocabulary, but in no way helped to determine the future. Maybe she should divorce Peter, move in with Tony, and go back to work when the bruises and abrasions went away. Julia had been stupid to say that out loud, naively assuming that no one was home. Peter called her in the evening and said that after work he was going to a bar with his friends to have a beer and let her do what she wanted. It's happened a lot in the last 6 months. Constant drunkenness of the husband, his delays at work, meetings with girls. And it wasn't always coworkers, more and more often prostitutes. But on this particular evening, he came home early and heard something that wasn't meant for his ears. I wonder if that's the Tony who's your housemate. Peter, you're home early. I wasn't expecting you, I'm sorry. I didn't even have time to heat up dinner. Yeah, I can see you weren't expecting that. I'm surprised you managed to get your lover Tony out of the house. Must have been the bed. Yeah, well, that's a coincidence. When her husband heard something that wasn't meant for him, and strangely enough, Juliet actually changed the linens before he arrived and threw them in the wash. It was an evening she would remember for a long time. The blow to the face, the fall, then the bump against the corner of the table and the ambulance crash, and then Tony the wheelchair and the incomprehension of how she could have gotten to this point. Julia, you should not despair. You are a doctor yourself, and you know very well that you can still get back on your feet. Tony was with her the whole time she was in the hospital, sitting by her side, spoon-feeding her, reading books, taking her for walks in a wheelchair. The doctors themselves did not understand how it could be that a young and healthy girl could lose her legs from a trivial fall. How could she lose her legs? They just stopped listening to her. She was fine. They said the bruises would go away sooner than her stomach, and she'd be back on her feet. Come on, Ethan, thanks for the encouragement. But I'm a medical professional myself, and I realize that when you're nervous, your legs can fail. So we just have to wait it out. And Julia, I gave you a sick leave so you wouldn't lose your job and have some money, and there. And if anything, I'll get a pension and go somewhere in the village to fresh air and fresh milk. With such words, she consoled herself, but she understood perfectly well she could not stand on her feet, and all her life would be confined to a wheelchair. That's how her husband ruined her youth, her health, and her desire to become a mother. When Peter beat her, Julia was pregnant. She didn't know it yet, but her husband's hand aborted her, robbing her of the joy of motherhood. It was later that she found out that while she was out, the doctors had given her a clean bill of health. I'm sorry, she's not you, you know. It was a little early. And how would you bear a pregnancy now? How would you raise a child? The girl herself did not know how she could just survive, bear, give birth, just to take care of the baby. What to say to all this? Maybe it's true that everything turned out that way then. After all, if Peter was raising his hand on her, then surely the baby would suffer as well. She just nodded her head and, turning the stroller, drove out of the chief physician's office. Her colleagues supported her, some with money, some with food, some just dropped by for a 5-minute chat. But Tony, it's not the same communication. It's not the same life I used to have. It's all that to me. Don't tell me you're sick of it and you're gonna go headfirst. But at the very least, off a bridge and into a river. What about me? You'll leave me to my fate, to the mercy of my accountants. Her friend could always cheer her up, if only for a moment, but it would make her smile. Although it was just Tony, whom Julia did not perceive as a man, as a lover and husband, although she realized he would be faithful not only as a friend, but also as a loving husband, a wonderful father, and even an excellent lover. Why did she think so? I myself did not understand. I'd never even slept with him once in my life. Life had given them only one kiss, but that was it. A friend, nothing more. Tony, I don't know how I'm supposed to go on. Just sitting in my mom's 3-bedroom apartment like this. Going from room to room in a stroller, looking out the window and enjoying the sunshine. I'm just going crazy. And it's only summer. What happens when fall and winter come? I'll go crazy. Julia, I take it you don't want to come to me. Then I'll give you another idea. My grandmother left me a house in the country. True, it's not an apartment with Euro renovation, but the structure itself is good. There's a stove. And by the way, it'll be great for your spine and legs. Then there's water. By the way, it's brought into the kitchen, though it's cold. Then there's a small vegetable garden, but a huge garden. And Tony smiled at his memory of spending all his summers at his grandmother's house. Those were the best days of his life. He would run with his friends to the river, fish at the local lake. Paris apples in the garden were his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And how good was sleep in the hayloft? And how good was the bread from the oven? Tony, I'm not much of a villager, me and the village. Who will bring me firewood? Who will bring me groceries? I don't know, maybe I'll get sick. And then what? Well, you're a doctor yourself. And by the way, there's a neighboring village in need of a therapist. You know, in villages, doctors are a luxury. Will you be needed there? You'll be welcomed with open arms. The chairman has a car. He'll drive you around if necessary, and he'll buy food and bring it himself. I don't even know, though I'm sick of sitting around. I've been at home for the 2nd year without any progress. And Julia shrugged her shoulders, tormented by doubts. I'm tired of sitting at home, but to go to the village as a doctor. Will she be able to cope? Who will help her? If anything, where? Who would want to take an invalid? Tell me, how does your disability affect your ability as a brilliant therapist? It doesn't. Patients come in, they tell you everything. You listen to their blood pressure, send them for tests, and then diagnose them. You're a brilliant diagnostician. To you, people sign up for 6 months in advance. The girl tilted her head with a smile. Yes, it was so long ago that she couldn't even remember. And Tony put his hand on her palm, resting on the warm shoulders that were wrapped around her legs, and looked into her eyes. Let's make a deal like this while it's fall-winter and still March. I think you'll stay at home, replenish your knowledge of medicine. What and how? But in April, I'll take you to the village, show you the house. Then I'll introduce you to the head of the local village council and show you the outpatient clinic. And then it's up to you. What do you want to do? I agree. Julia nodded and mentally imagined herself a village doctor. On the one hand, what does she have to lose? And so the job is a change of scenery, a salary after all. And the small disability pension she receives is not enough. And the girl nodded her head. It was good that at least she had him. Or without Tony, she would be completely lost. She didn't know what to do. Tony, I agree, but I don't think it will work out. That's a good idea. I'm handicapped. No. And the girl is a wonderful person and a professional. And just because you're in a chair, it doesn't mean anything to me. Tony, don't be ridiculous. You're a young, handsome guy, but why do you need me and what are you going to do? I won't give you an heir. I'll be a burden. Even though you're my friend, I won't be a burden to you. All right, I'll put it another way. If you were walking, you'd be with me, you'd leave Peter. If I walked, I'd leave him. I'd be naked. And then Julia cried. After all, about the fact that she lost a child and in the future, most likely, will not be able to have children. She hadn't told anyone. And now the memories came flooding out. There was no way she could stop the tears. A friend, don't shed tears for one fool. He's not worth it. I'm not talking about Peter Lou tears. Tony, you know, I haven't told anyone. You see, I can't have kids. Well, not like that. When Peter hit me and I fell, I had a miscarriage. But it was so small, I didn't know I was pregnant. The doctors cleaned it up, of course, but I'm just not sure I can get pregnant. You don't know, or that's what the doctors told you based on the test results. Toll, I'm an excellent diagnostician who can even diagnose himself. And I understand that even if you conceive, how to carry the baby. And who'd want to take a handicapped person? Only a pervert, probably. Julia, you must have really hit your head that hard then, on all your brains. I like you. Don't you realize that? And I want to be with you. Even if you spend the rest of your life spinning the wheels of that wheelchair, I'll carry you in my arms. You can't conceive. Let's do the echo. It won't help the adoption. It'll just be with me. The words sounded so convincing that the girl looked at her old friend for the first time. On the other side, as a man, she, wiping the tears from her face, took a tissue and blotted it again with water under the tap face. Tony, are you really, really serious about this? Is there any other way? Or do you know me? It wasn't the first day, but she closed her eyes and rested her head on the back of the stroller, touching her head to the cold tile. It helped her to collect her thoughts, to focus, to realize from scratch to herself what she really cared about, what her exhausted body and soul wanted. Tony, I am grateful for your help and all that you have done and are doing. But let's not rush things. I need to figure things out on my own. She opened her eyes and looked at the guy who sat across from her and smiled his charming smile. Julia instinctively reached out to him and pinched both cheeks, but just like a small child. Yes, in fact, he was a little boy to her. Even though he was only a week younger than her, that's fine. Now let's get dressed and go for a walk. It's a beautiful September. We shouldn't miss what nature has to offer. It was a beautiful fall day, which Julia remembered for a long time. Because today she was reborn anew, looked at Tony in a new way, realized that she was still alive and that she could be. Even if not as a mother, but as a wife and a friend and a specialist. It was not without reason that she had studied for almost 6 years, and she had a lot of practice. A lot of people talk about her as a great professional. Tony, you know what I was thinking, the girl said when the guy brought her home. I guess I'll go into my old job this week and ask for a practice to restore my knowledge. I'll wash ducks and take test tubes if I have to. You don't need legs for that kind of work, but hands. You see, you're starting to think soberly, and everything will come to your senses. As for Peter, my advice to you is to sue him. No, you know what happened last year. The statute of limitations expired. That's what my chief of staff told me at work. Although, like you advised me to sue my husband. But I'll be honest, Peter was helping me out with money at the time. Yeah, and he crippled you. Okay, Julia, it's up to you. You're a smart girl. Yes, I am, Julia thought. When she washed in life under a stream of warm water, in the converted shower she went to sleep. If she was smart, she would definitely not allow that he raises his hand on her. Although what's done is done, you have to live with it, dearie. She didn't let Anya go. She's a wreck on the beach. And you're all at my wedding. The girl lay on the bed and thought maybe and really divorce Peter to live in the village, develop legs, and maybe even get pregnant. With whom? Anyone, even my old friend. There aren't many men around. I'm still young and attractive, and I'll get on my feet. So with these thoughts, she closed her eyes and instantly blacked out. She fell into a deep sleep without noticing. That night, she was running along the same beach again. Like back in first grade, when she was given a trip to the sea from the school. How blissful was that? To run on the sand like that, her feet, and we were languidly on the warm sea. And all around was sun, wind, and freedom. The girl didn't notice how she woke up crying. Her pillow was wet, and the clock showed only 3 o'clock. Julia rose on her arms and looked out the window. The moon was accurately illuminating her bed, and in its rays the fall leaves were twirling. It was like a waltz when 1, 2, 3, and twirled in a magnificent dance to the brilliant melody of Bach or Schubert. She adored music and more than once put at home records Soviet old turntable devalued around the room. But it annoyed Peter, although the girl herself did not understand why. Why does it annoy you? It's a classic. That's what annoys the classics. And I'm not all of them. I will never be like the common herd of sheep. I'm unique and special. And one day, in a fit of rage, he smashed her old record player, stomped on the records with his feet. And she stood there and watched and couldn't do anything. She didn't understand why. She just stood there and watched her hobbies being trampled on. And now she understood it was a kind of dependence on her husband, a manifestation of love, a sacrifice to her executioner. And Derry got something. Probably a new blank sheet of paper from which to write her future. And she lay down again, just turning the pillow wet side down. So what if it was wet? Tears are water, and water has a way of drying up and evaporating. And you, Peter, are definitely out of my life. Enough. Julia moved to a small village in the middle of April and did not regret it for a minute. Yes, it turned out to be quite a picturesque place, just as Tony had promised. A small house, but quite sturdy and cozy with 2 rooms and a hall, kitchen, and entrance hall. A large garden behind it, and around it endless fields covered with the first green grass. After the urban metropolis, it seemed like some other unreal world. Well, you're a lucky girl. Spring is early and warm this year, even without rain. By the way, here are the keys to the gate of the house. Keep and possess. And be your rightful owner, if I was on my feet. But I'm not much of a hostess, am I? There's a huge garden, and a vegetable garden. They need care and supervision. What can I do? You can keep your spirits up and at least look after it. Pick the fruit. And nature is like that. You know, smart aunt, look and the tree will give birth. Julia smiled at her friend and put her face under the warm spring breeze and the first real rays of sunshine. How nice is it here? It's not her apartment, where she was locked up like in a prison and didn't want to see anything or anyone. Now she could have a cat in the house. Maybe even some chickens. What's in there? She can feed them. And then there's the truth. What kind of household would have more rabbits? Can she buy milk from the neighbors? Tony, you know, I want to have chickens here, even a cat. And then you can help me with that. No problem. Come on, I'll introduce you to the head of the village council first. He, by the way, I saw in the car, came to the local medical center. And there on the spot we will organize and chickens, and firewood, and help around the house. The house is fine, but the yard should be cleaned up. Everything is overgrown. There the bushes grew wildly. Let's go. That's all later. Already on the spot at the local medical center I saw her. I noted that everything here is done quite well and clean to the best of my ability, and the equipment is not new, but working. The medicines are stacked properly, right? You can feel the hand of the manager, which pleased her immensely. So we'll work together, she thought. Tony, hi. What brings you here? The voice of a short, stocky man distracted the girl from her inner musings. Andrew, I brought you a general practitioner. If you take Julia under your care and protection, Andrew, the local council leader, will help you with everything. Good afternoon. The lovely Julia. I'm delighted to meet you, and also delighted that we'll have our own therapist. Because you know how poorly we have it in this area. It's horrible. 2 nurses and a driver. That's the whole staff. How do you manage? Julia, I was genuinely surprised at the way the work is done here and how people manage without proper training. Beautiful Julia, I'm ready to carry you in my arms. Just stay with us. You're our salvation and our help. You're already settled in, by the way. Andrew naively thought she had already agreed. But how can you work in such a mode and with such a set? Julia just didn't understand, and already inwardly doubted whether she should stay here. But she was not used to giving up, so she smiled at the head of the village council and simply said, Yes, Tony has taken me in his house, but I really need your help to organize the yard. It's overgrown. I need wood to clean the stove, and so to speak, my personal request, if you can, chickens and a ginger kitten. No problem, Julia. By lunchtime, you will have a man with mow the grass, clean the yard, then tomorrow we'll take care of firewood and stove, and they're smoothly moved to the garden. You have firewood for the first couple days? Yes, thank you. But we'll organize the chickens. We can ask around the neighbors. Didn't any of them grow up dry? My man will see the condition of the hen house, bring you some food, and we'll think about kittens. By the way, you would also need a small dog in the yard or in the house to run and bark like a bell. Julia smiled. It's true. Well, how in the village without a dog? No way. She already imagined how from the morning she would feed the hens, give porridge with dog's meat. How she would pet the cat and go to the garden to drink her morning coffee. No, her Julia shook her head and mentally already stayed here. After all, how stupid was she to have stayed in the city for so long? She should go to the air, to nature, develop her legs, and forget about Peter could already walk on her own 2 feet. I'm sorry, she's not up for anything you said. Andrew tilted his head closer so he could hear her better. No, I'm sorry, Andrew, it's nothing. Just thinking out loud. It's okay if I call you by your first name. I'd be happy for you to call me by my first name. That's so wonderful to hear. Andrew, from a girl like you. Come on, I'm not a girl anymore, and a wheelchair doesn't make me look good. You know, I've always been a sensible man. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The main thing is the mind, and the body is harmful. Excuse me, but how come Andrew shouldn't ask now? You'd better help the girl to get settled, and then you'll ask questions over a cup of tea. Tony made it clear to his head that the topic was delicate enough that he shouldn't be so gung-ho about the new therapist. Julia, I apologize if my question offended you. But you understand, we have a priest in the neighboring village, so he's talking about the beginning. Andrew, sorry, let's not talk about your mysticism. And all of a sudden, Tony tilted his head up to the sky and rolled his eyes. He had heard this story about the local priest from the head of his village more than once. They say he has the gift of healing, cures cancer, exorcises demons, and so on. People even come to him in droves, coming from cities and almost from neighboring countries. And here he is right next door. Just take it. Tony, that's where you're wrong. He gets people back on their feet, by the way. You should go to the temple. Oh, sorry, when you're settled in, I'll take you there. It's a beautiful place. Even artists come from the capital to sketch there. So you won't regret it. And communion with God, you know, thank you. But probably a little later. And I can't say that I'm a particularly religious person. You know, doctors and priests are like 2 opposing camps, each with their own truth. Yeah, it's like Spartacus and Dynamo fans. I agree with you, dear girl, but still we come to it. But that's for later. Now let's go to my office. I'll feed you lunch and we'll talk about it. What do you want in the house and what do you want in your dispensary? It was near evening in the flooded house when Julia and Tony sat at the table and had dinner. We discussed working points, what was needed, how much, how to organize the work. It was like that. Tony, it's all so cool. I haven't felt this good since I entered the institute and met Peter. But she immediately faltered when she read the grimace of displeasure and misunderstanding on Tony's face. Yes, Isabella, the way he used to raise his hands at you. And he probably wanted to say that it was probably his fault she was in a wheelchair now. But he didn't. He felt sorry for hurting and so exhausted both soul and body. So he just got up and walked out of the room into the yard. It was so desirable to smoke. But the guy gave up this habit about 3 years ago, although a pack of cigarettes in his bag or in his car was always there. He went back to the car and rummaged through the glove compartment, pulled out cigarettes and took them out. One he lit. A few minutes later, he heard the squeak of wheels. That's right. Julia pulled into the street to see where he was. Tony, I'm sorry. I understand that mentioning Peter annoys you, but let's not make a big deal out of it. I'm trying to get over him, but so far I'm not doing a very good job. Yeah, I know, but I hate to see you like this. Then don't look. Then why did you bring me here to get out of my sight? She swung the baby carriage around angrily and, misjudging her strength and the country roads, tipped over, falling sideways. Tony did not have time to pick her up, and Julia fell to the ground with a thud and flew out of the stroller, crying like a little girl from resentment and pain. No pain at all. More like resentment that Tony had said that to her. He knew how she reacted to every remark he made. It was one thing for a stranger to say it. It's another thing if it's said by a friend who knows everything and anything. Julia, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I'm sorry. Darling, you're my man. Tony, how can I forgive you when she was choking with anger and tears? If you blame me for my disability, how do you work with people after that? How do you get them back on their feet? Well, I'll tell you straight up that you're in the way now. Your own professionalism, work with disabilities, or you or me to tell you how many great doctors, being almost at death's door, put others on their feet. And this village needs your bright head. There are 2 assistants plus a driver with a car. She looked up at him from below and could not hold back the tears that rolled down her cheeks. Toto neatly put the stroller, also neatly put the girl in it, and without saying a word, just drove her friend into the house. Already there he transferred her to a bench near the stove and began to take off his sneakers, then dirty and muddy pants, sweater, despite Julia's fierce resistance. So don't even think about resisting. I'll bring you, by the way, the other day, washed and connected. There's water in the house, so you won't have to do it by hand. Nothing fell off the stroller, but the crown won't. Julia, but really, I'm sorry about what I said. It won't happen again. Let me put you on the stove to warm up and try to sleep. I'll stay with you for a couple of days while you get organized. What about your work? She looked at her friend in surprise. She knew how important it was to him. I just took a week at my own expense. I'll take another if I have to. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. It's important for me to get you settled in here and be comfortable. That you have everything you need. You've got firewood and food for at least a couple weeks. You got a cat and a dog and chickens. What else do you want? Then my boss knows exactly where I am and who I'm with. And by the way, he says hello and thank you very much. Thanks for what? I didn't remind my boss of Tony, but I just didn't understand what he was thanking her for. Yeah, he brought his wife to you, who couldn't get a diagnosis. And you knew right off the bat that she had cancer. And it's a good thing they detected it in time, punctured her, didn't let her die a horrible death. What's he talking about? Come on, it's my job. By the way, did you know that dogs and cats can detect cancer cells by smell? I've heard of it. I've even read about it. It's like the Americans have adopted this technique in hospitals. Now we're not America. At least we've got this outpatient clinic to deal with. Okay, I know there's a few charitable organizations in town. I'll contact them. I'll get them to drop off some equipment, medical supplies, and bandages. I understand summer's a hot time in the village. Oh yes, you'll have a lot of work to do. This one's got blood pressure, the other one's got early slopes, the third one's got shovel blisters, and so on and so forth. Wait till you see this. The local women from the neighboring villages will start asking you to marry their sons and grandsons. Believe me, that's a separate topic of conversation. Tony, are you really joking? The girl looked at her friend attentively and on her hands. Having risen, settled down on the stove. No, believe me, in our villages there are 5 women per 10 men. That's the statistics. And believe me, your legs are not a judgment. If a man loves you, it's in a city where there's only silicone and eyelash extensions. Guys choose their girlfriends on principle. How much money is invested in her? And here in the villages is important natural beauty without embellishments. And believe me, for many your legs will not be an obstacle. Like for you? Did you just realize that now? Tony smiled and gave her a big, and in the rank to cover her legs and stroked her hand. He had loved this girl for a long time, even after she stopped walking. And the disability hadn't turned him away in any way, hadn't broken him for a minute. Only gave him an even greater desire to care for her, not to become her protector. I am your knight, and may it be without end. But at that moment, the front doors in the hay creaked and soft, light footsteps were heard. Tony and Julia looked at each other. They were definitely not expecting anyone today, and now they had an uninvited visitor. Good evening to this house. Neighbor Wendy's voice sounded loud and even resounding throughout the small house. Good evening, Grandma Wendy. How are you? How's your health? Tony was glad to see a neighbor he hadn't seen in 5 years. And by your prayers, Tony, I heard you had a doctor come to see us. That's good. We need doctors. I hear you need a cat for your house. Well, I brought you a kitten from my cat Red. Will you take it? We'll take Wendy. I don't know what your middle name is, I'm sorry. Julia said to her, looking out for matches. So it's you. Good evening again. Just call me Wendy. What's your name? Julia. Just Julia. I'm sorry I'm not meeting you on my feet. It's just my feet on wheels over there in the corner. The grandmother immediately realized that the new medically disabled. But she didn't show her surprise with any words or facial expressions. She was a wise woman who had delivered babies, but now she was no longer in good health, although she still had her wit and experience. It's all right, Julia, I understand you're Polish by nationality. Not by nationality, but by my father. He's Polish, and my mom is a native of St. Petersburg. So that's how I got my international mix. It's okay. It's good to have two nations together. And for your legs. But don't worry, we'll put you on them. Get out of here. You know, we've got a lot of holy places here. And the land is fertile. Build it with your bare feet and you'll feel the power coming from it. Wendy, do you really understand that Julia is a doctor and all that? It's science. And here I am with my superstitions. Here's my superstition. The red cat will be, believe me, a great rat catcher. And the grandmother took out a beautiful red kitten, which she immediately handed to me with joy. The girl almost jumped from the stove on her own 2 feet. After all, she had dreamed of such a miracle for a long time. And here it was, brought straight home. The cat looked at her carefully and flashed, started quietly muttering Julia under a warm hand stroked, lice it on the head. What a big kitten. Can you feel the breed? I've got a cat. What do you want? My son brought her to me. He says she's a purebred Siberian cat. Mirka's alive, but my son's long gone. That's the legacy of my boy, and the old woman turned away. I quietly wiped away a tear, reflected on life, and Tony and Julia just fell silent for a moment. Wendy, do you happen to have any extra chickens for the household? We need to teach the metropolis the joys of rural life. Yes, please, even 10. I'll pay you the money. The girl was glad that her neighbor could help her so easily. Although, Tony, I don't have a chicken coop yet, and I don't have any feed. I do have chickens. I'll be able to give them to you in 2 weeks. They're still small. Let them grow up. My chickens are great dryers. So you'll always have homemade crates. Can you order feed from our head? He buys for the whole village. Thank you. Why did you have your blood pressure taken? Or do you have any complaints? Julia's professional sense has kicked in. My girl, I came to you not as a patient, but as a neighbor. But I'll come to the reception, but only as soon as you get settled both at home and in your hospital. Then I'll complain. But for now, she put milk, bread, and homemade on the table for you. The old woman put a bag on the table and began to take out food from it. By the way, Tony, give me a small plate for the cat. I'll pour him some milk. Let him get used to his new home. And if the little guy runs away, don't worry. He'll probably run to his mama's house and talk to the young ones for a few more minutes. Grandma went home and Julia and Tony went to bed. What was there to say? The day had been full of events, of emotions, of getting to know each other. But strangely enough, it was in this house on the stove that Julia slept as sweetly as she had never slept. Even at home, she dreamed of the sea. And once again, she was running down the beach on her own feet. Julia, wake up, girl. What's wrong? Tony's voice sounded as if from far away, and the girl didn't immediately realize she was still asleep. Tony, I'm sorry. What happened? The girl's voice sounded sleepy and somewhat annoyed. After all, she was sleeping so sweetly. You were crying in your sleep and moaning. I woke you up, but I'm sorry. I dreamt of the sea and the beach. I was running on the sand. It's a good thing I woke you up. Are you going to lie down again, or are you going to get up? And what time is it? I didn't look at the clock and was surprised. It was almost 12 o'clock. Wow, she's been asleep for almost 12 hours. Oh, I'm so hot. I've never slept that long. This place is really nice. It's easy to sleep. No nightmares. Tony, help me into the stroller. I gotta get up, wash up, feed the cat, and I gotta go to the outpatient clinic. You probably forgot it's Sunday. I fed the cat a long time ago. As far as sleeping on the stove while I'm here, that's fine. But when I'm gone, you'll have to sleep on the bed. Who's gonna carry you back and forth? Only me. Come on, go wash up and have breakfast or lunch. I've got it all ready. Yeah, Peter never fed me breakfast. He waited for me to cook. And if you don't, it's on you, Julia. You get a big slap in the face. And here it's just like that. Breakfast on the table and the cat's fed. And the furnace is fueled. Yeah, Tony, you know how to make a woman feel good. and without straining, and without thinking about intimacy with the usual movement of your hands. Julia pulled up his pants, changed his shirt, and then slipped matches, for example, and pulled up a wheelchair, sat down through. First one leg, then the other, and then she drove out into the yard. Isn't it beautiful? It's beautiful. The words from the famous movie came to mind. But what can you do if it was really so? And Julia smiled quietly to herself. The cat immediately jumped into her arms and looked carefully into her face, as if asking what plans her mistress had for today. And there are no plans. It will be necessary, though, to inspect the garden, the henhouse, and everything in the yard. You're with me, kitten, as if understanding her words. Immediately the motivation hinted, jumped from her hands, and with all the vigor rushed into the garden. The garden to see the henhouse. The yard is good, but do you even eat, then? Tony stood on the doorstep and looked at his friend carefully. He regretted that he had asked her to live in the village like that, but it had seemed like a wonderful idea to him at the time, away from her ex-husband. Fresh air, natural products, no gas. But now he was standing there, thinking that he should first put the house in order, think about the car, refrigerator, groceries, and then take the invalid, how she would be here on her own. You know, she doesn't have to. I'll leave you my old cell phone. I'm sorry, I haven't gotten a new one yet. You'll call me every morning and evening. You promise. I bought it myself. I had to get the house cleaned up before I could bring you here. But now I'm here eating fine eyeballs and talking to you. But Tony, don't think about it. Trust me, I'm not that weak. That's a first. Plus there's a job, and there's people, and a car. So who's there to turn to in case of emergency? You know, it's a good thing the job came right out of the blue. In fact, it's a plus for you. In time, maybe then you'll go to the city. It's better to translate than to start from scratch. I said that and only then thought that words could offend my friend. So immediately bit my tongue and simply ducked into the plate. And Julia herself realized that the guy wanted the best. But it turned out as usual. Oh well. I mean, maybe you should be less reactive to words. You gotta get used to it. Girl to the fact that you will not get up. But at the second legs, as if pierced by a charge of current, and Julia, from surprise, shrieked and dropped the fork. What happened? Tony stood up from his seat in surprise. Nothing. It was just something that pricked Julia's heart. She didn't want to say that her legs were electrocuted. Don't entertain the hope that they might regain their sensitivity. That's the connection I had to the temple. Well, the one the head of the collective farm mentioned yesterday. In principle, it's possible. But let's do it next weekend. Just this morning, a man from the village council came to see the henhouse. He said it was good, only that it needs some repairs and left to get some materials. So we should be here by 2 o'clock or so. So we go to the temple or wait for the master to repair the henhouse. But of course, the master is more important. And my future ones don't need a decent house. So they had breakfast, though it was more like lunch. They chatted merrily. And the girl more and more caught herself thinking that here she would settle down. And this place would bring her a lot of happiness, although she did not realize that here she could meet not only her happiness, but also revelations. The days flew like minutes of the week, like hours. Tony returned to town, promising to come back on weekends, and she stayed on her own. But why on her own, she said to herself as she escorted Tony over the threshold. There's the cat, and then there will be more hens. Now I'll have to get used to living in the village. Soon there will be hens. Really, Carrot the cat flashed and lost his head, and her chin. Yeah, here comes reality. But it's time to get started on the house. And there maybe she'll really get up and start walking Carrot Top. Why don't I go see a priest? Well, if it doesn't help you get back on your feet, then at least you'll confess. The cat trustingly knocked, as if agreeing, and began to rub her face, mewing in her ear his song. What a marvelous animal. Yes, and what a wonderful song. And anyway, why was she so opposed to coming here? I guess it's the fear of change that stops a lot of people. Though now she realized it was all for her own good. Rural life and everyday life spun the girl, and the work carried her away. So Julia sometimes forgot that she was in a wheelchair. What's to say? The talent of an excellent therapist and experienced doctor make her famous. To the new doctor lined up lines of sufferers. Julia, you're our star. The head of the village council once told her. By the way, read about you in the newspaper. And he handed her a newspaper bought in a neighboring district. And indeed, on the first page, there was a note that the new doctor of the village of such and such puts not only people on their feet, but is considered a great diagnosis. And the reason for this is one case in the village. A trivial case. But probably it is from such situations that local legends and stories are born. In one resident of a neighboring village, a girl first grader fell ill. For a long time, they could not establish an accurate diagnosis. The little girl was bothered by a woody cough. Everyone thought a cold, but it turned out to be a heart problem. And it's good that the diagnosis could be made in time, when the problem can be solved with medication and did not have to resort to surgery. There are many such situations, and there will be more. Julia thought. After all, she loved these places and these hard-working, kind people. Andrew, could you do me a favor? One day, Julia asked the head of the village council. Yes, my dear, beautiful visitor. Lord of my rheumatism, tamer pressure all I can. Could you take me to that temple you spoke of, where Father John rules? Is it true that he has some kind of power? Julia, and you tell me this. Are you a doctor? No, I'm sorry, he may have powers. What kind of power? But I've never heard anything about it. You really believe that? I'm sorry for asking. You know, your grandmothers and neighboring villagers have been telling me all about him. Believe it or not, maybe we should go. It's a good thing. Let's go. We'll be at the service this Sunday. See our beauty. And communion with God, you know. I don't know, but maybe he'll help me so I can walk again. Do you think I'll be your eighth wonder of the world? The priest laid his hands on her, and she got up and walked. Julia herself did not realize at that moment why she had spoken so disparagingly about the priest, about faith and God. Her mother and grandmother of the youngest had accustomed the girl to faith, but apparently the Soviet authorities and her studies at medical school had nullified all faith in miracles. Andrew stood next to her, looked at her intently, and asked Julia, "How did it happen that you are in a wheelchair?" You won't believe it, but my husband beat me. I fell, hit myself, and lost not only my legs, but also my unborn child. I apologize if I hurt your feelings as a believer, but when a husband beats his wife, somehow my faith in God and higher powers fades to nothing. I do. You know, in our temple, Father John was disabled himself. Yeah, well, don't look at me so skeptical. Just like you had problems with your legs. From what I hear, he didn't ride in a wheelchair, but when he took it, it went away. But if you don't believe me, I won't bother you with these stories, but I'll take you. And I should go to the service myself. I've got things to do. And the head of the village council left her outpatient clinic. But on the threshold, he stopped and turned around and asked, "Did you and your husband get married?" Julia did not say anything. She just nodded her head negatively, and the man didn't say anything, but just lowered his head and went about his business. Yes, life is such an unpredictable thing that the greatest sorrow and the greatest happiness can happen to anyone. But already on Sunday at 9 o'clock, Andrew's car was parked near her house, and he, with a smile on his face in a new suit, knocked on the door of her Julia. "It's Andrew, open up. Taking you to the temple today, Andrew. Come in. I'll make tea and come out to you. You can stay in the kitchen. I've made pancakes. We'll have breakfast, if you don't mind." "I don't mind. But to tell you the truth, I ate a lot this morning, and we still have to drive 30 minutes on our roads. So if you don't want to be late for the most solemn part of the service, let's go well. I, in principle, also ate in the morning, so, as they say, load me into your carriage and let's go. My car hasn't been bought yet. It's probably waiting somewhere in the showroom, but with a salary like this, I won't see it soon." She was trying to make a joke, but it didn't work. "Julia, if you need transportation, don't hesitate to speak up. I can just forget to offer you my carriage, as you said. Because if you need to go to the city or something, just a whistle. Thank you, I'll say. I don't know how to whistle, to be honest." So they drove to the neighboring village. They joked and laughed merrily. Andrew understood perfectly well that he was carrying a fragile girl, plus an invalid, so he tried to drive slower so as not to shake on the local roads. Julia understood this and mentally thanked him, thinking that her ex-husband would probably have driven like a daredevil, not caring about her needs. As they entered the neighboring village, Andrew steered the car steadily along the southern road. In a couple of minutes, they were standing near a wooden church. What kind of church is it, though? A real work of art. It was a rather large church, made of a solid log cabin with high domes and gilded crosses. It is really beautiful, as birch trees grow around. By the lake, you can see the forest not far away, and all around are greenery, blue sky, and curious people's eyes. Julia, don't pay attention to people. Everyone may be staring at you right now. That's why I warn you at once not to take slanted glances to heart. The main thing is not to touch them with your hands. I'm used to everything else. Then let me help you into the stroller, grab my neck. Julia put her arms around Andrew's neck and mentally noted to herself, he smells good. And how strong are his arms? You're a fool. In a wheelchair, you're looking at a man. But why not? She looked up and their eyes met. They met. How blue are his eyes? That's just creepy. Andrew, how blue are your eyes? Like the sky, but you didn't come here to see my eyes. And people are already looking at us funny, even though you said to ignore them, or did you? Julia grinned playfully and looked at the man. He was old enough to be her older brother or even her father. But right now she looked at him like a woman who had long ago forgotten how to flirt, but remembered that she could be beautiful and desirable. A merry gaggle of cats, and the one for whom one rolls down mountains, performs feats, and all that. But really, as she looked around at the people standing around the temple, she noticed the people squinting at them. She clenched her fists, driving her nails under the elbow of her wheelchair, and raised her head high. Andrew, it's a good thing you can carry me in this wheelchair, or I probably wouldn't have made it. Or at least turn around and drive away. Well, if you could handle it, you could handle it. But as for leaving, yeah. But I want to show you our pride, this temple from the inside, and introduce you to Father John. He's your age, by the way. And if I'm not mistaken, this man used to be in the military. Now he's ruling. Before she could finish, a priest came around the corner and waved. Andrew waved back. There's our spiritual father. Good afternoon, Andrew. Good afternoon. And to you, Julia. It's good to see you in my temple. How do you know my name? Although, pardon me, that's probably a silly question for a priest. It's not stupid at all, but I'll tell you right away. It's not mystical. It's just that I've heard a lot about you. I was thinking of coming to see you myself. Julia wanted to make a joke, but then he didn't. It's not appropriate to joke about such things with a priest. No, just to get acquainted. After all, medicine and religion should go together. Don't you think so? I suppose so. But I'm sorry, Father, I was brought up in the era of developed socialism. That's why you're not friendly with religion. But still I came here. I've been told a lot about you. Probably that I have some kind of healing gift, the priest replied. But that's more your paraphilia. By the way, and about you are legends among my parishioners. You accurately diagnose, so it's kind of similar. But that's not what we're talking about. Come on in. The service is about to begin. And the priest gestured both of them into the temple. When Julia drove carefully into the wooden church, she was surprised by the beauty she had not seen for a long time, even in large churches. And here in an ordinary village, the icons are painted gold, and the right? Yes, her grandmother was probably right. When priests would walk like Christ with one stick and in one robe, then faith would be strong. But she did not say anything, but just stood on the baby carriages near the entrance and listened to John's sermon. Indeed, this priest had a lot of eloquence. I guess I could immediately see the KGB school, where rhetoric was at the highest level, as well as the ability to persuade. Well, that's probably the reason why there are such legends about this priest. But it's their bread, their job to turn Orthodox and unbelievers alike to Christ, to strengthen the faith and whatever it takes. What do you think of my sermon? Father John came up to Nina after the service and looked at her carefully. You know, it was impressive. I think even the most unbelievers would definitely become your parishioners. But I don't know if I'd be one of them. But faith is a thing. You know, you have to come to it. So no one's gonna force it on you. although I'd love to have you among my friends at least. I'm glad, and frankly, I'd love to accept your offer of friendship. You might actually. Come see me in the outpatient clinic. As your blood pressure goes, maybe I should prescribe you some vitamins. You have kids. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a silly question. You're a priest. It's all right, don't worry. But I'll definitely come back tomorrow if you don't mind. Julia nodded her head and only wanted to turn around and go to Andrew's car as her gaze fell on a man. Strange, she noted to herself. A painfully familiar back and gait in general. But she shook her head and drove on to the car of the head of the village council, justifying this similarity. And what can he do? My Peter is mine. She still considered him hers, though she had long ago tried to forget him. They had parted under not the best of circumstances, and Julia still wore the ring. And she can't even get to the registry office to file for divorce. Is it worth getting a divorce? Maybe everything can go on as it is. She grinned wickedly and let him chase me if he thinks of getting married a second time. I don't think he'll ever get a divorce. Never. Julia, I hope you didn't wait long for me. Did Andrew's voice bring her out of her own angry musings? No, it's okay. I'll at least get out of my little world called home. Work is great. How's the service, by the way? Hope you're not disappointed with your time. No, you know, Andrew, if you don't mind coming down here, you should definitely take me with you. I really like it here. It's beautiful. You can really come here for sketches. A lot of people come here. Imagine, by the way, some of the paintings depict me. Just like our priest. Andrew, have you ever had it in this place that you look at a person from the back, and it seems to you that you have already seen him somewhere? I mean, it could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be here and now. And that you've met someone you know. Julia did not say that she had seen her husband's back, but just kept silent. She didn't pursue the topic herself, but the unpleasant residue remained. Though business and care of the house and the outpatient clinic made her forget about it. Although soon the girl again experienced a lot of unpleasant moments. And the reason for this was the fall holiday, which in the village it was customary to celebrate at the very beginning in the temple. Who does not know this holiday, when in the temple are carried to sanctify apples, honey, and nuts, which are loved by many? Julia, let's go to the temple. We should consecrate these first apples from your garden. You've done well, by the way. You've trimmed the trees, removed the old bushes and branches. Kudos and honor to you. But Andrew, it's not without your help. Julia once again caught herself thinking that Andrew liked her more and more, although the man himself was polite and all. He didn't try to pester her or somehow show his own desire, only the maximum of politeness, attention, and help. Though in fact, for that she was already grateful to him. After all, few people cared about her. Tony didn't count in this case. Yes, I take a little credit for that too. But it's still your labor, which is worth appreciating. And the cat has grown hens everywhere in the yard, and in the house you can feel the hand of the mistress. It's true that the house and the garden were cleaned. Everywhere you could feel the attention and care in all this. Julia put not a part of herself, but all of herself, and nature gave her much more gratitude in return. They drove to the temple and sweetly chatted about everything. And the girl did not even suspect what could happen to her that day, when Andrew helped her to get out of the car and get on the stroller. Julia turned it around with the usual movement of her hands and drove to the temple. Not waiting for her counselor, she knew full well that Andrew would not enter until he put the car in the church. In fact, he tried to drive as close to the entrance as possible to make it easier for his companion to get in. When Julia drove into the church, she looked for Father John with her eyes. The service had not yet begun, and it was possible to talk to him a little, as was usual before every service. But when she heard his familiar voice and turned around, and she almost fell off the stroller, Julia just couldn't believe her eyes. Standing next to the priest was her husband, and he was crying. He was really crying. Julia could see large tears rolling down his face, and his hands were trembling folded in the area of his chest. She sat in the stroller and could not believe her eyes. Her husband was here in the temple crying. There was no way that could have happened. Peter had never attended church, especially during their entire time together. He didn't cry, she hadn't seen a single tear on his face. Even when his mother had died, He'd been stingy with tears at the funeral, as well as any emotion. But could it be her hallucinations? A trick of the eye? Yes, it couldn't be. She remembered this man better than anyone else. And it hadn't been long enough since they parted to forget his profile, that favorite leather jacket of his. Come up and say hello. Why not? After all, she didn't really owe him anything. He's the one who got her into this state. Peter, is that you? Julia's words sounded to the man out of the blue and like a judgment on Julia. Is it really you? Have I changed so much that you don't recognize me? Or have I aged? Although the stroller does not add beauty, but I think you can recognize my face. What brings you here? I hope it's not to follow me. No, I'm sorry. I'm here to see my father John on a personal matter. 8. My husband has a personal matter that has nothing to do with taking care of his invalid wife. Julia, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry you're in a wheelchair like this. But I'm here about something else. What is it? Julia didn't understand why she was interested in the private life of her husband, who had made her an invalid, but she couldn't stop herself. She didn't care about his problems. But most likely, it was a woman's curiosity that prevailed in this case. But her husband, strangely enough, did not react harshly to her harsh statement and just looked at her pitifully and walked away. Wow, thought Julia, what had happened to her husband? Previously, he would have simply torn her apart for such words. But now the girl did not know how to react. She didn't expect herself to be so brave. But turning around, she saw behind the back of Andrew Rural Head, who stood and with a hard expression, looked at all this. His gaze was the same as her ex-husband's. But, Andrew, you have heard everything, but I can introduce you in absentia. This is my ex-husband, or rather, still husband. We're just not divorced. And he's the reason I'm sitting here in a wheelchair right now. The man smiled and squatted down in front of Nina. He took her hands in his and kissed them, not realizing what he was doing. And then said quietly, you know, if he had said something bad to you, I would have killed him for sure. Here's a cross for you. And he crossed himself, and then he kissed her hands again. Andrew's treatment of her simply shocked her into a state of mild shock, and she blushed, like a freshman getting her first taste of light wine and kissing a guy. Like a grown woman, and so blushed with shame, Julia thought and simply tried to take her hands from Andrew's strong palms. You don't have to take your hands away. I didn't hurt you. By the way, John's father told me that you can, in fact, be put back on your feet. I wonder how. She wanted to be sarcastic, like, is this place prayed for? Or is there a special prayer? But she didn't. She didn't want to spoil such a beautiful moment. And by the way, she didn't care that people were standing around and looking at this couple as if they were mesmerized. The head of the village council and the invalid. No, he has a masseur he knows. He's a practicing guru or something, but he's the one who got him back on his feet after the tragedy. That's how I remember it. You said he was in the missile force somewhere, and not in the missile force, but in security, guarding a secret facility in a space town. Well, I guess it's not that simple. By the way, he promised to give me his phone number, but he said that he would contact him first to clarify whether he accepts patients or not. Where is he now? Do you think I have any chance of walking on my own legs? I think it's worth using any method, and as a medical man, you should know that. Now let's go into town. I know a great taco place, and they have a real Mexican chef. At the mention of food, Julia realized how hungry she was, and her stomach was charging so treacherously that the sound must have been heard by everyone around her. Yep, looking around. She looked at the people and saw that everyone was looking at her like she was a free circus. So be it. Andrew is a fine man and a fine man. Surely he's the one every woman from small to large is pining for. She proudly raised her head and turned the stroller and went to the car. Look, look, I'm not so helpless. Yes, the afternoon and evening had been charming. Great company and delicious tacos, a cozy cafe and Andrew nearby. But the minutes flew by like crazy. And only in the evening Julia remembered that she had to work tomorrow, and she looked at her watch and shrieked quietly. Oh, I have to work tomorrow, and it's so late. And the cat's home fed. And the chickens are affected by the costs of city life. when you are not responsible for anyone but yourself. Don't worry about it. I called your neighbor's grandmother, and she's been feeding everyone. I've got a car, and I'll take you home. How are you enjoying your evening, by the way? Andrew, you don't know how good I feel. I had a wonderful evening here. That's good. So you were able to forget about your husband, erase him from your memory. And that was the truth. She didn't even think about Peter for a minute. And Tony had kind of faded into the background. And the strangest thing was that she enjoyed Andrew's company. And the man himself seemed to enjoy her company. Andrew, please tell me if you like me. That's when I just sit like this and my mangled legs and the wheelchair are not visible. Warmed by wine and the attention of a handsome man, Julia didn't know why she asked that. Maybe she wanted more attention? Maybe to believe that she was attractive as before. You know, Julia, you are a very beautiful young woman, and I will try to put you on your feet if you will let me, and then it's up to you to decide how we're going to proceed. She nodded her head and looked down at him, thinking how not only was he nice, but also sensible. He didn't say he'd be with her forever. He didn't swear to be faithful to her love like Tony had. He just gave her a choice, but he said he liked her openly, which she couldn't help but be pleased about. And it was at that moment that she realized her past was behind her, gone with her head. Like her Peter did today, Andrew, thank you so much. You know, your words are like a prayer to me, and I just want to do whatever it takes to get my legs walking again. And you're right, then we'll see what we can do. What do you mean? That's it for now. Let's go home. He said it so warmly. It made her want to go home with him. But so far it was just her fantasies and daydreams. Though why dreams? She'd have to get back on her feet. And then maybe she'd ride in Andrew's car and look out the window at the trees and the houses of the field flying by. And it would be quiet and peaceful, as it had never been, not even with Tony, who she knew was wholeheartedly in love with her. And how right he'd been when he'd said that her legs would be no barrier to a man in love who wanted her. What's on your mind? My dear sorceress. And why did Julia smiled and looked at the small man sitting next to her, who was ready to outshine the whole world for her? Well, I don't know, I just wanted to call you that. He turned and looked at her with his sky blue eyes. About what? You know, I just want to keep going, keep going, keep going. No. I should stop at a gas station, have a coffee, eat a hot dog, and then get on the road again. Yes, that's an interesting thought. But I, like you, love the road, especially at night or in the evening, when the sun goes down or it's already set, and you're just driving along not knowing where you're going. I hope you know where we're going now. Yes, I think your Carrot Top is waiting for his mistress. And indeed, the cat was already sitting on the porch looking at her, and the chickens were already sitting on the roost, fed and fed by a kind neighbor. Andrew carried her into the house in his arms, then brought the stroller in, asked if he needed anything, and left. And really, she did not need anything now, but just to be alone with her thoughts, to think about how to live on. And what's next? We have to go to a masseur and work on her legs. You're a medical professional, Julia. You do the thinking. She washed her face and lay down on the bed Tony had made. And just when she closed her eyes, she fell into a dream. It had been a long time since she had slept like this, without dreams, without emotions, and almost until noon Julia simply slept. Although it was Monday, and she always set her alarm clock for 7 o'clock, but that one wasn't new to her, where a knock on the door made her wince, being floored. It's Andrew. I didn't catch you at work, and I can't reach you. You're fine. Andrew, come in. It's not locked. I overslept. I'm fine. I was getting worried. Why didn't you tell me you had the day off, by the way? I wasn't planning on it. I don't know why you decided that. I didn't decide that for you. We were seen at the temple yesterday. Then we went to the restaurant. And when I came to your office, I was told on the spot why we're not together, and why am I asking where Julia is? Wow. So by country standards, we're a couple now. And it turns out we are? But by the way, I don't mind this way of putting it. And I'm pleased that we're almost married. You do know, by the way, that we went to the priest yesterday to arrange the wedding? Even so, Julia really didn't even realize that people thought like that. But the thought itself really pleased her. At that moment, she did not feel her own disability and inferiority. And the very fact that she could be with this handsome man was already inspiring. Yeah, we both know what happened yesterday. But be prepared to be questioned about the details of your future celebration. Thank you for the heads up. But Andrew, I'm interested in another fact. Julia, with a habitual movement of her hand, moved the stroller to herself, threw one leg over, then with her whole body moved into it and threw the other leg over. It was as familiar to her as brushing her teeth or peeling potatoes would be to a normal person. I see you don't need any help. You're doing quite well on your own. Yes, it's a habit and a year of training. But that's not what we're talking about. Andrew, I'm interested in something else, and you can help me figure it out, no problem. Say what you need to say. I saw my husband at the temple yesterday. But why did he come? That's what I need to find out. You can approach John. I'm on good terms with him. Unless it's a secret confession, I suppose. Oh, and just so he's not in doubt. Here's my wedding photo and my passport, which still says we're husband and wife. You can tell him my story, that he beat me and now he's here. What's his goal? Maybe he wants to do it again. He wants to hit you. Are you serious? Yeah, the whole village is gonna stand up for you. Andrew, I understand. And that my husband can do anything. He's the kind of man who will stop at nothing. That's one thing. And in terms of my defense, do you have to move in with me or do I have to move in with you? That's great. Let's get your chickens and your cat, get your stuff and go. I have a big house. I don't think Tony would mind. And I feel more comfortable on neutral ground. So if you could just ask John why my husband came here. That's why I came here, by the way. With all this talk, I've forgotten why I came to see you. He told us yesterday that the two of us could come to him. So let's get ready. I'll make you a quick breakfast and get you to the priest. I'm not going yet. Andrew quickly made sandwiches, brewed tea, and invited her to the table. Yeah, look how thoughtful he is. Just like Tony. There's a lot of people to choose from. Are you smiling? That's wonderful. It means you're in a good mood, and your husband's presence around doesn't dampen your mood. Julia, excuse me, why haven't you divorced yet? If you don't want to, you don't have to answer. No, it's simple and trivial. I myself was not eager to file for divorce. And with my legs, I don't have much time to go through the courts. And your husband. But I guess his pride didn't allow him to stoop to the level of having to deal with the issue himself. I'll say this, probably we were both satisfied with this state of affairs. Would you like a divorce? The man's voice sounded calm, but inside him everything was raging. Yes, and understandably, if she does not want to divorce, then, apparently, still loves her husband, and he simply has nothing to do around. And if he does, he has every chance to make her happy. Although, on the other hand, with or without a husband, he will try to make this woman happy. What do you think, Andrew? I think so. Julia nodded her head and ate her sandwich and went outside. She really wanted to divorce her husband, but she was afraid to do it herself. No wonder. After all, Julia knew her husband well, and if he did not like the idea of divorce to be beaten again, and there was no telling what the consequences might be. Andrew left the house, closed the door, and looked carefully at the back of the girl sitting in the wheelchair. Only now he began to understand a little what she had been through. Julia, let me help you sit down later behind the wheelchair and let's go. And you can ask John yourself, by the way. Why did your husband come? She nodded her head and with a familiar movement of her arms around Andrew's neck, who moved her to the front passenger seat. Then he loaded the stroller into the trunk and got behind the wheel. The man had been examining his son for a long time, but was all afraid to show his feelings. Katya, for the last few days, caught her interested look at himself. Of course, it was possible to delicately ask what yes, how. But in the very case intervened the ex-husband of her Julia. Although what ex, if they are still not divorced, and damn him. He came here for a reason, and he went straight to John. John went straight for it. Maybe he really wants Julia back. Have you thought about it? Switching to you. Asked Andrew that your husband Peter wants you back, and therefore went to the priest, but so to speak, with an authority figure to influence you. I thought so. But I know my husband well. He's not used to acting like this. He's rude and mean, even though he has 2 degrees. He was brought up in an intelligent family. But if anything is out of his control, he'll just raise his hand and beat you, and that's it. Any constructive conversation is out of the question. That's why I was confused yesterday by his behavior and his reaction to my words. Calm, even humility, and no rudeness. Well, his people were there, witnesses. Maybe that stopped him. Oh no. He beat me up in front of witnesses once. And you can't imagine, it was a special treat for him. It was his way of elevating his status, showing he's not beholden to anyone. Yeah, well, if that's the case, his behavior does look suspicious at the very least. I'm surprised you guys made it through the night on your own. All right, we'll go. I'll talk to John. Half an hour later, they were sitting in the courtyard in the priest's gazebo, and John was putting together the table and putting on the samovar. How good of you to come. Just like that without a call. You invited us yesterday, so how could you not come? By the way, Father, Julia has a question for you. You see, here's the thing. Yesterday you were approached by her husband, who, in fact, is responsible for the tragic confluence, for the fact that she does not walk. What kind of husband? Tall, swarthy, in a gray leather jacket. He arrived in a white car. You must remember him. He's quite stately and not like the locals. Julia, I have a lot of people coming to see me, so don't take that as praise. But I really might not have remembered him. No, you were just pulling up, and at that moment he turned around and walked towards you. Yeah, that's right. You see, I know him very well, and there's no way he'd just come here. I'm just afraid he's gonna make me do something terrible. I'm afraid to even guess what it is. Let's just say that in the old days, a word he didn't like could get him beaten up. And the result of that beating is sitting in a wheelchair in front of you right now. I understand you, Julia. You're afraid for yourself, but you can sleep well with this man. He did identify himself as Peter. He came here for a different reason, and that reason is not you. Certainly not to divorce you or any other issue. But what then? I saw him crying. And knowing Peter, he's never cried at his own mother's funeral. And here I'm at a loss to guess. You shouldn't. My dear Julia, this is not a secret confession. So I can tell you the reason why he came here, to soothe your soul and dispel all doubts. The priest stood up and went to the window. He must have been thinking about whether to tell or not, but he realized that the woman was right, and it was worth answering her question. After all, she was his wife and a woman who could really have been maimed by this man. I will tell you the reason why this man came here and decide for yourself if he is threatening you or not. Peter came and asked for my help in removing his sin. And I suppose that sin is you, Julia, what he did to you. Why would he say that? Peter thinks all his unborn children are dead because God has turned his back on him. Those words made Julia shudder. So he had other women, and they slept with him pregnant, but apparently couldn't give birth for some trivial reason. Peter was raising his hand at them. She commanded and hooked her fingers into the handrails of her wheelchair. Julia, I suppose. Do you know why his woman can't give birth? And it's not about God or a curse. Peter still raises his hand to them, like he did to me. When I fell and tragedy struck my legs. I was also pregnant, but the due date was so small I didn't realize it. Thank you for sharing your grief with me. I will definitely pray for your soul and hope that the Lord will give you the strength to stand on your feet and feel the joy of motherhood and find a good man. And you tell me, Julia, did you get married to Peter? No, he was against it, and I didn't really insist. And you know, we're both doctors, so to speak, people of scientific mind. And what advice did you give my husband, by the way? Let that be my secret. And how do you feel about going to church? But I hope you'll come to the temple. I'll try, Father. I really like it here. By the way, Andrew told me you know a doctor who got you back on your feet. Oh, by the way, I'm glad you reminded me. That's not true. A doctor like Emmanuel the Masseur. And he really helped me get back on my feet. I called him this morning, by the way, and he's ready to see me in 2 weeks. He's in advanced training right now, so you're going to have to wait a little while. I really didn't know all the specifics of your situation, because he spread his hands as if apologizing for not being able to fully help her. But thank you. And that's the end of my thanks to you. Father John. What matters to me is that you care about me. And there's the truth. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to go. You will. By the way, I'll give you some experience of my own. When it's warm, you take off your shoes in the morning and walk barefoot. Step on the wet grass dew. It has lasting power. Do you have a lush garden, by the way? As I recall, Anatole's mother used to grow various fragrant herbs, so he will be especially grateful to you. Thank you. Father John, I guess we'll be going. The girl looked intently at Andrew, begging him to get out of here as soon as possible. She didn't know why she wanted to leave so badly. Maybe from the overabundance of information, maybe for some other reason. But Andrew understood it and did not delay. He turned down 6 old friends and took her to her car. Julia, what's wrong? You left the priest's house so quickly. Did he hurt you? No, Andrew, it's okay. I got an answer to my question. And he didn't hurt me in any way. John, honestly, I don't know. But it's like someone was pushing me out of this house. Well, I won't bother you with my attention, and you'll forgive me. I have to run an errand. I'll take you home. I'll drop by tonight, if you don't mind. Sure, I don't mind. He looked in this and all the following evenings, trying to become not just the best friend and assistant, but something more in the life of the girl in whom he fell in love at first sight. And he really didn't care that she was disabled, moving around in a wheelchair. The man was ready to carry her in his arms, but only just. Andrew, you were right, Julia once said. And you and I are already talking. Our nurse Nadezhda asked me today, out of the blue, when are we getting married? Wow. But basically, what do you want? Tony's been telling me that I've been visiting too much. I mean, after all, you're a single girl, you live on your own. You should talk to him. You don't have to. I'm really uncomfortable. It's like I complained about you. That's not a man's habit. She smiled quietly. Really? Tony was right to a certain extent. But on the one hand, she was enjoying the visit. Andrew, by the way, before I forget, Father John got through to his friend, the Monopoly therapist, and booked you in for this Sunday. And by the way, we won't have to travel far. The specialist will come to his temple. Can you have him come down here and take a look at you? Maybe he can really get you back on your feet. Do you still believe in miracles? I'm not much of a doctor, but I wouldn't say no to help. I'd like to think you'll need me on my own, not in a wheelchair. Do you really think so? Andrew looked at her carefully. Yes, he smiled. But behind that smile there was sadness. And it was no coincidence that Andrew ran into Julia's husband again in the temple, who had come not by himself, but with his own position. Yes, a man knows how to choose his women. But I guess it's not fate. Andrew did not want to argue with him in the temple, but simply waited until he went outside, and approaching, quietly said, "We need to talk." Peter looked at the strange man in amazement, but did not argue, but simply asked his companion to wait for him in the car, and stepped aside. "Why did you come here to make fun of a single woman again? I know very well that you are her husband and what you did to her. Are you the reason she's in a wheelchair? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I didn't know anything about my ex-wife being here. I came to see John's father because my girlfriend can't carry my baby. Then first of all, why don't you give her a divorce? And secondly, why don't you support her? She refused my money. I'll file for divorce without her. And maybe Father John is right. We all pay for our sins. And what happened to Nina is my sin, which I'm now buying with my kids. Have you tried just talking to your wife and putting things right? You're probably right. I should come and talk to my wife and ask for her forgiveness, and maybe God will grant us both healing." He lowered his head and walked toward the car, but after a few steps he turned around and shouted toward Andrew, "I'll be there in 2 weeks on Sunday. Give this to Nina." And now the man stood in front of Nina, thinking whether or not to tell her about her husband's visit. But perhaps he should tell her, for his visit might be an unpleasant surprise. And he didn't want to get on the young woman's nerves. "There's something else I wanted to tell you. Really, don't get me wrong. What is it you have to say to me? You're not going to ask me to marry you." "Yes, I've seen your husband. I've been talking to him lately. He's coming next weekend with his woman." A shiver ran down the young woman's spine at those words. and for a second she felt as if an electric shock had slipped through her stiff legs. Had sensitivity returned to them? It couldn't be. It's the stuff of science fiction. Are you saying he's coming here? It's for me. What did he say to you? And how dare you talk to him about me at all? Julia, wait, he came to the temple with a girl, and she keeps losing the baby. He asked the priest for advice, repented that he had committed many sins, and this is his punishment. And wait, my dear man, he wants to come and ask your forgiveness for what he has done. He better give you a divorce. That's what I want with all my heart. He'll file for divorce himself. That's what Peter told me. That's what Peter told me. Why do I have to hear it from you? Julia turned to yelling in anger, though she didn't understand why she was yelling at Andrew. In fact, he had always helped her, and now she was choking with anger, but she couldn't help it. After all, her husband is coming here with his new fling, who will look at her and point his finger and say your wife is handicapped. You realize that he will come here with his girlfriend, his mistress, and that one will point her finger at me and say I am handicapped. What am I supposed to do? You don't. He's not coming here to introduce you and her. He's coming here to apologize to you, silly. Do you understand that? He's going to make up for his sins and give you a divorce to make up for his sins. Ha, that's Peter. Yeah, I wouldn't believe it for the life of me. Julia answered her. What if it's true and he gives you a divorce? Ask sincere forgiveness. It'll help, but I don't know what would make you happy. Andrew, I'll tell you more. I forgave him a long time ago, but now I don't want to see him, especially not with his new girlfriend. And you don't have to meet him. I'll be with you and I'll talk to you in person if you give me the go-ahead. If I have to, I'll tell him all the things you want to say and more. Julia herself did not realize what she wanted. For the truth was, she had forgiven her husband long ago. Let him go, threw him out of her life. And now she finds out like this that he has another woman. They want to have a child, but he didn't want to have children with her. Why is that? Julia, why are you angry? You've accomplished a lot. He will come to apologize on his own. He'll give you a divorce. I lost my legs because of him, of my unborn child. Do you understand that? And now I find out that he took a new wife, wants a child with her, and killed mine. Tears were streaming down her face. After all, she remained an invalid without a family and a child. And he will have everything that she did not have and still does not have. How could she live with such a thing? The woman simply did not understand it. She tried to dull her own pain by working, taking care of people, garden, animals, and this house, everything that surrounds her. I beg you, don't cry. Let's make up our minds. So talk to your husband, and I'll be right there with you, so to speak, as your support. Solve all your issues with him, so you can be calm. Do I have to? I just want to get my divorce and forget it all. Forget it like a bad dream. That's the way it's gonna be. But first you need to not only deal with your own husband, but you need to get checked out. How would you feel about having him check you out here at home, by the way? Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm comfortable here, and I think he's used to working from home. Good. Then I'll make arrangements with him and bring him here. And please don't cry, and everything will be fine. And Andrew put his hands on her lap, patted them lightly, and stood up and walked out of the house. Wow, this is news, Julia thought. And so everything started so well. Her husband's arrival, his repentance, the possibility of a divorce, and a box. Woo, what a day. It all came at once, but nothing, we'll figure it out. Carrot Cat poked and began to lose, and her chin encourages her aspirations. Say, mistress, everything will work out. Don't upset her nor looked around and wiped her tears. What's there to say? It's not worth it for old offenses to spoil the life, which began to get better, and the rest. Julia, under what circumstances did you lose the ability to feel your legs? The question embarrassed her, but she was ready for it. Yeah, you know my husband hit me once. I fell, and I lost feeling in my legs. But there's no fracture, no nerve damage. Just a bad bruise, that's all. Doctors say it could be psychosis. But what if they tried? Nothing's working. Aha, but I've seen it happen more than once, particularly when working with soldiers coming out of the war. And by the way, there's a solution there. aggressive massages and applications, mineral water baths. You know, excuse me, what's your name? Oleg. Just Oleg. So, Oleg, I'm a therapist myself. I've tried a lot of methods of means of techniques, but nothing at all. Well, you haven't had me until now. I'm not a magician, I'm just learning. But I'll try to get you back on your feet. So you're sure I can walk? Julia was lying on the improvised massage table, under which they took a wide bench, and smiled. There's no fracture. The nerves, as you say, are intact, so I don't see any serious reason why you can't walk or feel your legs. So the man pressed a point on her foot, but in such a way that Julia cried out. A current ran through her leg with terrible force, and she could have sworn 220 volts had been run through it. Oleg, did you just run electricity through my body? Electricity? No, I'm working on your active points, which temporarily fell asleep, became inactive, and were responsible for your legs. And what I'm seeing, I like it already. So I can give you back your legs, sensation, and mobility. Now just relax and enjoy. With every massage, with every touch of my hands, the feet didn't chew. They were responding to the touch, becoming docile. She could even move her fingers on the tables already, but she could not yet stand on them fully. Even so, the results pleased her immensely. Andrew, can you imagine? I can feel my legs. I'll be able to walk soon. And that's the best thing that's happened to me lately. But besides the fact that I moved here and met you honestly, you're glad you came here and met me. And that's a no-brainer, isn't it? You have become to me not just a friend and a helper, but something more than a friend. Julia, do you remember what I told you earlier? She looked at him carefully, trying to remember what he might have said to her. But so far it was not coming out well. I don't think you do. But I'll remind you, as soon as you're back on your feet, I'll ask you to marry. Wow, Andrew, I don't even know how I'm supposed to react to that. You don't. Just first stand on your feet, get on your feet without a stick, and then think whether to accept my proposal or not. The young woman smiled and lowered her head, trying to hide her joy in her smile and the bright sparks in her eyes. She had the pleasant words of a man she had been waiting for so long. Yes, I'll think about it then. In the meantime, you will help me to disperse, because how to go to the registry office, in a wedding dress and with a stick in his hand? It wouldn't be very pretty. No, it wouldn't. You'd have to match the wand to the dress. And I'll tell you, that could be a problem in particular. If the wand is masculine, not feminine, no stones or flowers, and all that. Wouldn't you agree, Andrew? Yeah, I'll have to figure out where to get you one or have it customized. Well, why don't you tell me how your results with the masseur went? It's great. My legs are regaining sensation. By the way, Andrew, I'm gonna need your help. I mean, I have a husband coming to my house this Sunday, and I really don't want to face him alone. Will you be there for me? Of course, I'll always be there for you. And that was the truth. Andrew was practically always there for her. In her darkest moments, Peter never showed up. He didn't want to look her in the eye and apologize, but he did file for divorce, which he notified her about in a little note. That's fine. I'm glad I didn't have to meet you in person, and I forgave you a long time ago. So you're done with your sins. I'll try to take care of mine. In a few weeks, she received a divorce certificate, and 6 months later, she was choosing a wedding dress in a bridal salon. And Tony Julia was there to help her. But why him? You're getting married again. Tony, but you're my friend, and he's my husband-to-be. I invited you to this wedding ahead of time so you wouldn't have to go through the motions. Don't let anything happen to you this time. Tony, you say that again, and I'll beat you up for sure. No, I know you're heavy-handed, so let's just try on a wedding dress and decide which one's best. Otherwise, you'll never pick one. And you're definitely getting married in a tracksuit. Oh yeah, it's so comfortable, and you don't have to worry about matching sneakers. I'll say, the wedding ceremony was modest and quiet with a minimum of guests, but still solemn and beautiful. And of course, they were married in the local church by Father John. And Tony, as an old friend, witnessed, Ava's farmhouse to Not On Here are the keys to the house. I've already transferred the deeds to you, and may it be your new family nest. Yeah, thanks, man. Because this is where I met my happiness and got back on my feet in every sense of the word. You're my best friend and comrade. Without you, I would never have been happy. I would have sat in my apartment and spent my days and nights alone. And here. And there's a new happiness waiting for us. Yes, my darling. Yes, my dear man. I couldn't have gotten back on my feet without you, nor without the help of our spiritual advisor, Father John. So please, everyone to our celebration. We've booked a small restaurant, so it's gonna be family style. I don't want any flashy lights. I mean, really, what's she need it for? She's got a family now, a husband, a house of her own. And maybe there'll be kids. Who knows, maybe these places will really help her to get pregnant again and find the joy of motherhood. And let everything be well with Peter. And she at that moment sincerely wished him well. From the bottom of her heart, even in spite of the grief he had brought her. Maybe she wouldn't have met her true happiness without it. Who knows?